My roommate's parents favored sons over daughters and refused to give her any living expenses. Feeling sorry for her, I paid for her meals throughout our 4 years of university. Her way of repaying my kindness was to force me to marry her brother and bear him a son. Her reasoning was that buying her meals meant I had feelings for her brother. I refused to agree, and she simply pushed me off the rooftop. When I opened my eyes again, it was my roommate asking me cautiously, "Aloan, are you going to finish that? If not, can I have it?" I smiled faintly and dumped it straight into the trash. "I'd rather feed it to a dog than give it to you." The moment I put down my chopsticks, Bryony came over and asked, "Aloan, are you going to finish that? If not, can I have it?" Her eyes welled up with tears, as if I had done something to hurt her. My family is poor, and my parents only care for my older brother and younger brother. They only give me 100 yuan a month for living expenses. I don't even have money for food." Bryony, just hearing her name tells you how much her family favored sons over daughters. But what does that have to do with me? In my past life, I fell for her sob story and took pity on her. I paid for all her meals throughout our 4 years of university, and how did she repay me? They want me to marry her brother and move to their poor, backwater village. She even had the nerve to say, "Aloan, my brother might be poor, but he's really handsome. Isn't the only reason you started buying me meals because you saw my brother? As long as you're fertile and can bear a son, our family will treat you well. You should bring a hefty dowry, and we'll build a big house back in our hometown. Your family is loaded anyway. What's 300,000 or 400,000 to you?" Later, when I refused to marry her brother, she just pushed me right off the rooftop. After I died, my parents' hair turned white overnight. Bryony acted as if nothing was wrong, and even suggested I enter a ghost marriage. Her reasoning was that I had promised to marry her brother while alive, so I was still part of their family in death. Enraged, my father got into a fight with them. In the chaos, he was hacked to death by Bryony's father, grieving the loss of both her daughter and husband. My mother cried until she had no tears left, then swallowed a whole bottle of sleeping pills and took her own life. This is the ungrateful wretch I once helped. Her way of repaying me was to ruin my family and destroy my life. I pulled my thoughts back. I looked at her coldly. "If you have no money for food, go ask your parents. Why are you telling me this?" Bryony's eyes instantly welled up with tears. "But my wealthy classmates used to buy me meals before. They saw I was pitiful and helped me a lot. You're so rich, shouldn't you help me when I have no money for food?" I nodded in understanding. "I see, you're just used to begging, aren't you?" Bryony's face flushed crimson in an instant, though she hid it well. The venom in her eyes was impossible to conceal. "Aloan, that's a horrible thing to say." Maya, who was standing nearby, walked over and placed my half-eaten meal directly on Bryony's desk. "Here, you can have it." This Maya had also received many favors from me in a past life. My toiletries, skincare products, clothes, she had worn or used them all. At the time, I thought since we were all classmates, I should help if I could, but when Bryony suggested I marry her brother, Maya even chimed in, saying, "Bryony's brother is quite handsome, Aloan, you should just say yes." Later, I overheard her saying behind my back, "I've long been fed up with Aloan's high and mighty, spoiled rich girl attitude. It's as if we're all beggars, surviving only on her charity. Someone like her deserves to be married off to some backwater village, otherwise, she'll keep thinking she's a fairy princess descended from heaven. Why does all the good fortune always land in her lap?" Before I could even go and confront her, Bryony killed me. In this life, Maya won't get off easy either. 2. I stood up and grabbed the leftover food. "Maya, since you love being the hero so much, why don't you go to the cafeteria and buy her a fresh meal? If you do a good deed with someone else's leftovers, who is she supposed to thank, me or you?" With that, I dumped the leftover food straight into the trash and gave Bryony a faint smile. "I'd rather feed this to a dog than give it to you." Bryony's tears streamed down her face, which was soaked and streaked from crying. She looked more wronged than Doi herself. Maya's sense of justice flared up, and she pulled Bryony behind her in one swift motion. "It's just some leftovers. Your family is so wealthy, and you couldn't even buy Bryony a fresh meal. How could you say such hurtful things?" Apologized to Bryony. I couldn't help but laugh. "Telling me what to do? Who do you think you are? This food is mine. I can feed it to the dog if I want, or throw it away if I want. What the hell does it have to do with you, Maya? Just because my family has money, I'm supposed to buy her meals, so being poor makes you right. Is that it? Since you're so full of righteous indignation, you can pay for Bryony's meals from now on." Caught off guard by my sharp retort, given my usual easygoing nature, Maya was left speechless for a moment. I'm not as well off as you are. Why should I be the one to pay? Besides, aren't we classmates? Helping each other out is just what you do," Maya said with an air of utter entitlement. "If I had the money, I'd definitely help out students in need." Bryony, who had been quiet until now, sniffled and mumbled softly, "It's fine. Alohan's meal must be very expensive. A poor student like me can only manage dry steamed buns. Although, to be honest, I can't even afford those." Playing the victim and milking the sympathy card, Bryony was a real pro at it. I sneered. "Can't afford food and still don't know to find a part-time job. Coming here to beg. Do you expect me to just give you money and meals for free? Why don't you start a live stream, with so many digital panhandlers out there? One more won't hurt. You'd probably excel at it. After all, shamelessness knows no bounds." "Alohan, you." Bryony's tears fell in heavy drops, sobbing uncontrollably. Maya stepped forward again. "Alohan, that's just vicious." At that, I raised an eyebrow. "Right, I'm the wicked one. You're so kind. Even though you're not as well off as I am, I'm sure you'd scrimp and save to buy Bryony meals in the future, wouldn't you?" Maya clearly had more to say, but I quickly cut in before she could speak. "Though, it doesn't have to be that pathetic. No need to scrimp and save. You've got hands and feet. You could always pick up a part-time job to earn some money, right?" Maya's face flushed a deep crimson. Under my provoking gaze, her composure began to unravel. "Fine, my treat then. I'm not like you, rolling in money but too stingy to spend a dime." She raised her voice and said to Bryony, "I'll cover all your meals from now on." I clapped my hands. "Maya, you're so kind. Bryony, aren't you going to thank me? If it weren't for me, you'd have no idea where your next meal was coming from." Maya snapped. "I'm the one paying for her meals. What's it to you?" I said with a smile. "I'm just following your lead, being generous with someone else's money." Maya, she shot me a glare, then took Bryony by the arm and walked out. I laughed heartily. Those two bastards deserved to be stuck together forever. 3. With no classes in the afternoon, I had just settled into a seat in the study room when someone took the spot next to me. It was Bryony. She gave me a slight smile and said, "Alohan, mind if I sit here?" "Alohan, I'm so jealous of you. So many people like you. You're pretty, your family is rich, you're like a little princess, not like me. Just because I don't have money, nobody wants to be friends with me. Even my own family doesn't like me." Here we go again. I rolled my eyes so hard. "There are plenty of kids in our class who aren't well off. How come they aren't as annoying as you are?" Bryony's eyes welled up with tears. "Alohan, how could you say that to me? I know you don't like me because I'm poor, but I genuinely wanted to be your friend." Everyone around turned to look. Perfect timing. Let's all enjoy a classic performance of playing the victim. "So, the only reason someone wouldn't like you is because you're poor. Your skill at emotional blackmail is really getting sharper. I don't want you sitting next to me because I'm saving this seat for my roommate, Saren. This is a study room. People come here to study, not to listen to you wallow in self-pity. If you can't make it on your own, go back to your parents and ask them why they didn't try harder, why they favored sons over daughters. We don't owe you anything. We have no obligation to absorb all your negativity." More and more people were turning to look. Bryony's face flushed crimson as she hung her head, sobbing. "Alohan." Maya strode over, books in her arms. "That was way out of line. All Bryony wanted was to sit next to you. Was there any need to be so harsh? Does having money make you think you're better than everyone?" She took Bryony's hand. "Come on, you can sit next to me." The peace and quiet of the study room was completely ruined by those two. I decided to just introduce her to everyone. "This is Maya, the class saint." She said that since Bryony has no money for food, she'll cover all of Bryony's meals for the next 4 years. The moment the words were out, they were met with a chorus of scornful laughter. "Holy shit, there are still people dumb enough to be taken for a ride like that. You don't get it. Nowadays, the poor are always right. There's no shortage of self-righteous do-gooders." Seriously, in this day and age, a perfectly capable college student is actually begging for a free meal. "Alohan, you," Maya stammered, too flustered and angry to get the words out. "Well, she's the one who stuck her nose in. Serves her right for getting herself into hot water." "What's wrong, Maya? You're not backing out, are you? How is that any different from donation fraud? You took all the credit, but now you won't pay a single cent. What kind of person are you?" Under the piercing gaze of everyone, Maya forced herself to say, "I am not backing out. I said I'd treat Bryony to meals for 4 years, and I meant it. I'm not like you, rolling in money but still so stingy." Yeah, I'm stingy. You're the real saint, the absolute Mother Teresa. You go, girl." After saying that, I smiled at Maya and walked away. "Alohan," Bryony called out and started to follow me, but Maya had a death grip on her arm, leaving her unable to move. She's probably fed up with Maya by now. That kind of person only latches onto the powerful. She wouldn't give someone as slight as Maya the time of day, but those two are cut from the same cloth, both rats from the same sewer, so neither can look down on the other. For evening, someone from the school newspaper suddenly came to our dorm. "Maya, I heard your own family is struggling too, yet you're willing to pay for a fellow student's meals for all 4 years of college. Can I interview you? We'd like to feature your story in the next issue. Maya was both surprised and delighted. When had she ever experienced the thrill of being in the spotlight? But she played it cool. Oh, it's really no big deal, but I can give you some material. With that, she and Bryony followed the senior from the newspaper club out for the interview. My roommate Saren leaned in with a grin. You're the one who tipped off the school paper, aren't you? That's pretty devious. Now that idiot Maya has no choice but to deal with Bryony. Of course it was me. How else is she supposed to get a big head if we don't build her up? Sure enough, when Maya came back, she was beaming with smug satisfaction. Some people are so wealthy, yet they won't spare a single penny. If they had, the school newspaper would have interviewed her, wouldn't they? So rich, yet so petty. How embarrassing. Saren laughed so hard she clutched her stomach. I couldn't help but let out a snort of laughter. Maya talking about having a grand vision is truly a colossal joke. Since she has such a grand vision, in this lifetime, let her be the one to replace me as the sucker and act as Bryony's personal ATM. I didn't say a word. Maya, convinced she had outsmarted me, went to take a shower, looking utterly smug. When she and Bryony finished their shower and started their skincare routine, I knew the real show was about to begin. Maya only uses off-brand skincare products. In my past life, she not only used my skincare without asking, as if it were her own, but she also gave my creams and foundations to Bryony. A low-end stuff is all high quality, and she has plenty. Just take it and use it. Don't be shy. This time around, I've locked away all my belongings. She won't be able to get her hands on anything. I walked over with a smile. Maya, Bryony just washed her face and hasn't done her skincare yet. Why don't you let her use your products? Maya was admiring herself in the mirror, but her smile vanished the moment she heard me. She shot back immediately. Why don't you let her use yours? Yours are all name brands. I shrugged. I'm not the one preaching about good deeds in the school paper. Besides, didn't you say it yourself? We're all classmates. What's the big deal about letting Bryony use some of your skincare products? Maya got flustered and started pleading poverty. Buy her meals and supply her with skincare. I don't have that kind of money. Well, you could get a part-time job to earn some. Isn't Bryony your classmate, your friend? Just look at Bryony's face. Her skin is so rough. You really should help her out. Maya slammed the table and stood up. I turned to Saren and said, so all those pretty words Maya said before were just empty promises. She had disliked Bryony and Maya for a while. One was always playing the victim, the other was a master of emotional blackmail, so she played along with my little act. Maya, you're not just using Bryony to craft your own image, are you? Poor Bryony, she really is pitiful. So, Maya, you weren't just lying in front of our senior earlier, were you? Bryony looked pitiful, her eyes welling up with tears as she gazed at Maya with hopeful anticipation. After all, Maya was her only way in. Since she couldn't leech off me in this lifetime, she'd just have to double down on draining Maya. Clenching her teeth, Maya handed her own face cream to Bryony. Here, use it. From now on, you can use any of my things. Thanks, Maya. You're so sweet. Bryony took the moisturizer from Maya and began applying it to her face. I chimed in, you need to slather on a thick layer for it to be hydrating. Hearing that, Bryony immediately scooped out another heaping spoonful. Maya's face turned pale with fury as she watched Bryony slather such a huge amount of the cream on her face. I had no choice but to grit my teeth and keep supporting Bryony. I couldn't have been more pleased. Maya, you were the one who guilt-tripped me in our past life. Now, it's your turn to see how it feels to be on the receiving end. And still, Bryony wasn't satisfied. Every time I did my skincare routine, she'd stare at all my bottles and jars, putting on this pitiful act, alone. Your expensive skincare must be amazing. Not like me. I can only slather cheap, useless stuff on my face. I just smiled at her. Maybe it's because your face is too cheap for the good stuff. Bryony, at times like these, she would glare at me with pure resentment, yet there was nothing she could do. She then went back to draining Maya, which was immensely satisfying for me to watch. A week later, when Saren and I went to the campus store, we saw Maya stocking the shelves. She must have caved and gotten a part-time job. Lately, Maya has been forcing herself to buy meals for Bryony every single day. Bryony has been eating Maya's food, yet she's been acting increasingly attentive toward me. I did some asking around and found out Maya has a part-time job at the supermarket, which pays her $500 a month. Her original monthly allowance was only $600, even with the extra $500. She still has to cover 3 meals a day for Bryony, soon. Maya couldn't take it anymore. The National Day holiday was approaching. Maya stopped buying meals for Bryony, giving her only 3 packs of instant noodles a day. After eating nothing but instant noodles for 3 days straight, Bryony finally had enough. Maya, I don't want to eat instant noodles anymore. Maya's face was full of impatience. If it weren't for me, with your measly $100 a month for living expenses, you couldn't even afford instant noodles. My money doesn't grow on trees, you know. You think I can afford to feed you meat every day? Bryony got upset too. That's not what you said in the interview. Besides, if you didn't want to help me, why did you have to go and offend Aloan? Every time I try to talk to Aloan, you butt in and stir up trouble. Now she can't stand me because of you. If it weren't for you, I'd be better off eating Aloan's leftovers than having instant noodles every single day, Maya shot back. Bryony, are you really complaining about free food? Beggars can't be choosers. I only offended Aloan for your sake, and I'm even feeding you. You should be thanking me on your knees. If you dare utter another word of complaint, you won't even get that instant noodle. Saren and I were right outside the door. Hearing that, I finally pushed the door open and went in. Maya, you've already done the interview and gotten the good publicity, and you're just feeding her instant noodles. If the rest of the school finds out, they'll be talking behind your back for sure. Where would I get that kind of money? Maya was on the verge of tears. I can barely afford to feed myself. Bryony came over, looking at me with faint earnestness, playing the innocent victim. Aloan, I really don't have any intention of going against you. Hearing this, Maya said angrily, Bryony, you're so ungrateful. From now on, you can sort out your own meals. No, Maya, that's not right of you. I said with a smile, you used Bryony to build up your good reputation. Aren't you afraid she'll tell everyone you mistreated her, feeding her instant noodles 3 times a day? The whole school would turn on you in a heartbeat. Bryony nodded emphatically at my words, turning an innocent look toward Maya. Yeah, Maya, forget about people drowning you in criticism. What if they feel tricked and decide to cyberbully you? You know what cyberbullying is, right? It's absolutely terrifying. Bryony really knows how to twist the knife. The word cyberbullying hit Maya like a physical blow, instantly silencing her and draining the color from her face. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Bryony's smug expression and allowed myself a faint, knowing smile. This goes far beyond mere ingratitude. This is the heart of a viper, utterly venomous and cruel. Maya is probably going to be driven to her grave by her. Sure enough, the two of them were stuck in a vicious cycle. Maya was also stubbornly clinging to her pride. In the end, they agreed with Bryony on 2 instant noodle meals a day, and buying her something else from the cafeteria in the evening. Bryony was initially reluctant, but seeing that Maya was genuinely broke, she finally gave in. They still agreed, however, to only eat instant noodles for a month, while also pushing Maya to find a part-time job. Maya was now left speechless and defenseless. She wanted to shake off Bryony, this clingy leech, but had absolutely no way to do so. She could only be stuck to her, being squeezed dry to the last drop. 6. There was a school gala before the National Day holiday. Just like in my past life, as a freshman, I had a piano recital. After the performance, I went backstage, and my parents were already waiting for me. My daughter was amazing. My dad was grinning from ear to ear. My mother was also looking at me with a face full of pride. I stepped forward and hugged my parents. Given this second chance at life, I was determined to protect the peace and happiness of our family of 3. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Xiang. Bryony approached and greeted with a smile. I'm Aloan's classmate. My name is Bryony. My parents are kind-hearted people. Upon hearing she was my classmate, they welcomed her with warm smiles. Bryony linked her arm affectionately with mine and said, Mr. and Mrs. Xiang, you've raised Aloan so wonderfully. Learning the piano must have cost her a fortune. Right, when I was a kid and saw people playing piano on TV, I was so envious, but my family was poor. We even had to take out loans for my school fees. There was no way they could afford piano lessons for me. I'm really so envious of Aloan for having parents like you. Not like me. My parents only like my older brother and younger brother. They don't like me at all. My parents. The smiles on their faces vanished after hearing Bryony's sob story. Their expressions seemed to say, wait, why is she telling us all this? That's just how Bryony is. She never misses a chance to play the victim. Bryony laid on the flattery again, telling my mom, Auntie Xiang, you're so beautiful. I thought you were Aloan's older sister for a moment. My mom gave a faint smile. My surname is Chu, please call me Auntie Chu, but you married Uncle Xiang, so you should have taken his surname. That's what my mom did. Bryony continued, Auntie Xiang, if only my mom could have married a rich man like you did. You're so lucky. Is this idiot seriously thinking she's complimenting my mom? My mom is actually a very accomplished person, you know. Just then, Maya arrived as well. 7. Hello, Uncle and Auntie. I'm also Aloan's classmate, and we're even dorm mates. Maya shot me a glance, her expression practically dripping with arrogance, but the dorm is shared by everyone, and since we all know clashes are inevitable, I'm not saying Aloan is a bad person, but I do believe it's important to be kind, but it's just so wasteful for Aloan to throw away food she can't finish. Bryony can't even afford a proper meal. Why not give the leftovers to her? She gets so much pocket money every month. Just a little bit of what slips through her fingers would cover Bryony's living expenses for a whole month. Uncle, Auntie, could you talk to Aloan? I'm sure you want your daughter to be a kinder, more compassionate person, don't you? My parents both stared at me in astonishment. A smug look spread across Maya's face. Aloan, how do you have a classmate like that? My mother asked, genuinely perplexed. Maya's smug expression faltered. Auntie, what do you mean by that? My mother's expression turned serious. Young lady, isn't this emotional blackmail? If she has no money for food, she should ask her own parents. Why should my daughter pay for it? Did my daughter give birth to her? After a moment of stunned silence, Maya blurted out, you give Aloan such a generous allowance every month. Shouldn't she help a classmate in need? My mother let out an elegant laugh. We make charitable donations every year. And my daughter has her own foundation. The money she saves from her allowance has already helped many people in need. It's good to be compassionate, but we shouldn't be foolishly kind. Sure, our family has money, but we didn't just pick it up off the street. Every penny was earned through our own sweat and toil. We're not obligated to help, are we? More and more people gathered backstage, all whispering and discussing the situation. Is this guy an idiot? Ratting someone out right in front of their parents. She probably thinks Aloan's parents will take her side. Bryony, who was standing nearby, quickly stepped forward. Maya, how could you say that about Aloan? After saying that, Bryony looked at my parents with an expectant expression and began putting on an act. Uncle, Auntie, I know my family is poor, but I will work hard on my own. I would never resort to begging to get by. It's a matter of personal dignity. Maya is my roommate, and I apologize to you on her behalf. After she finished speaking, Bryony looked at my parents, her expectant eyes practically overflowing. It was clear she was waiting for them to offer financial support. Unfortunately, my parents just exchanged a glance. Clearly, Bryony's little act was child's play in their eyes. My parents simply smiled without saying a word. Maya's face flushed crimson with humiliation and fury as she lashed out. Bryony, I feed and house you every single day, and this is how you talk to me. Bryony got defensive. That's your own claim. You have me eating instant noodles every day, yet you get to play the saint. What have I ever said about it? More and more people gathered to watch the scene. This is hilarious. Is this the showdown of the century between the do-gooder and the ungrateful wretch? Right, Bryony's the one talking about dignity over handouts, but it's Maya who's working 3 jobs. What can you do? Maya's a regular in the school paper. She's built her whole brand on being the saintly, inspirational type. My parents shook their heads at that and took me out of there, leaving the two of them to tear each other apart. I know that no matter how badly Bryony and Maya fight, they'll always make up in the end. It's just how it is. They're stuck with each other for life. 8. That same evening, I went home with my parents. The National Day holiday officially began. Sure enough, Saren called me the next day. Bryony and Maya, that odd couple, have made up again, but this time, Maya's not being naive. She's roped Bryony into doing part-time work with her. I was just at the mall shopping and saw the two of them selling milk at the hypermarket. I found out they're making $100 a day from that gig. With the extended holiday and mid-autumn festival combined, they get 8 consecutive days off, which means a total of $800. 800 yuan was no small sum for the Zhao family. There was no way I was going to let Bryony have it that easy. The day before returning to school, I made an anonymous call to Bryony's parents, telling them she had taken on a part-time job here and earned 800 yuan. Sure enough, the Zhao family showed up the very next day. They cornered Bryony in her dorm room. What does a little girl like you need all that money for? Give us the 700, you can keep 100, Bryony said through tears. Mom, Dad, 100 yuan isn't nearly enough for me to eat on. Well, can't you just earn more? I sat to the side and said, Bryony, just give the money to your parents. Doesn't Maya cover all your food expenses anyway? Bryony's parents looked at Maya, their eyes lighting up. Her father suddenly grabbed her by the collar. You little brat, you had money for food and didn't tell us. Hand over that $800. Bryony refused, and her father beat her half to death. In the end, she still had to fork over the 800. I pretended to be considerate and went out to see Bryony's parents off. Uncle, Auntie, do you know why Maya is so nice to Bryony? Actually, Maya has her eye on Bryony's older brother, your eldest son. Bryony's mother's face lit up with delight. Really, she wants to marry my son? I nodded emphatically. That's right. If you don't believe me, just ask Bryony. The couple visibly relaxed with a sigh of relief. Wonderful. We were just worried our son would never find a wife, then. Both sets of eyes, now gleaming with hope, turned and fixed on me. Young lady, have you seen my son? He's a very handsome boy. I let out a dry, awkward chuckle. Maya and I are roommates. I can't go after someone she likes. Besides, my family's hit a rough patch. My dad's company was mismanaged and we're in a lot of debt. I'm too worried about money right now to even think about that kind of thing. I rolled my eyes playfully. So, uncle, auntie, if I were to marry your son, how much of a bride price are we talking? Hearing that, the two of them immediately backed away from me. I sneered. In this lifetime, not a single member of the Zhao family will escape. 9. Bryony was beaten black and blue and had to recuperate in her dorm for a whole week. She got another call from her parents. After hanging up the phone, Bryony asked Maya, "Do you like my brother?" Maya was stunned. "What are you talking about?" Bryony grabbed Maya's hand. "My brother is coming tomorrow. You have to come with me to meet him." Maya yanked her hand away. "Are you crazy? Why would I meet your brother? Your family's dirt poor. I'm not interested." Seeing this, I pulled Bryony aside. "Saying that right in front of us? You're going to make Maya too shy to admit anything," Bryony asked thoughtfully. "Aloan, do you really think Maya has taken a liking to my brother?" "Absolutely. You're so lucky to have met someone as kind and beautiful as Maya. If she becomes your sister-in-law, you won't have to worry about a thing at home anymore." I casually dropped a hint, and sure enough, after a moment's thought, Bryony's eyes lit up. I knew she'd been wanting to shake off the Zhao family for a long time, but she just hadn't found anyone to take her place. But now, Maya, the perfect sucker, has walked right into our hands. Just like me in my past life, she's not about to drag Maya down with her. Bryony's brother showed up the next day, right at the foot of our dorm, asking for Maya. Maya was absolutely furious and yelled at Bryony, "You fixed this mess." Bryony went over and pulled at Maya. "My brother's waiting for you downstairs. Get down there, now." "Maya, stop pretending. You were the one who said my brother was handsome before, so that's why you've been covering my meals. You've got a thing for my brother." Maya struggled, and the two of them started wrestling. Finally, Maya pointed at me and said, "When you showed us your brother's photo that day, Aloan also said he was good-looking. Wouldn't she be a better match for your family? She's loaded." Maya's gaze was filled with resentment and malice, clearly intending to dump this whole mess on me. I sighed. "Our family might run out of money soon. We're going bankrupt." "I'm bankrupt." "Just kidding." Maya was completely deflated, like punching a wad of cotton. All her force just dissipated. She could only throw a tantrum, crying and refusing to go down to see Bryony's brother. Her brother got furious and took it out on Bryony. Bryony hung up the phone in tears. "If you don't go down, my brother won't let me off the hook." "Maya, please, just go down and see him." Maya rolled her eyes dramatically, climbed into bed, and pulled the curtain shut. Bryony didn't know what to do and cried even harder. She was genuinely terrified of her brother. After all, she had no standing in that household. Anyone could push her around or even hit her. When classes started in the afternoon, Bryony didn't dare go downstairs. I stayed in the dorm to comfort her. "Come on, don't cry," Bryony said plaintively. "Aloan, my family finally found a potential bride for my brother, practically delivered to our doorstep. If I mess this up, they'll kill me." I sighed. "So what do we do?" Maya just won't agree. "You can't possibly trick her into going out with your brother to force the issue, can you?" Bryony's sobs hitched, and she fell silent. Sure enough, not long after, she dried her tears, went into the bathroom to make a call. I heard her say to her brother, "Bro, go wait at the motel first, I'll call you." When Maya got back from class, Bryony said to her, "If you don't want to marry my brother, then forget it." Maya snorted coldly. "What are you going to do about it if I don't?" Bryony changed the subject. "There's still that part-time job on Saturday, $200 a day. Are you going?" Maya's heart skipped a beat. "I'm in." I knew it. Bryony was about to make her move. In my past life, Bryony teamed up with Maya, who tricked me into meeting her brother. I was almost assaulted. Now it's Maya's turn to get a taste of her own medicine. 10. I have no idea where Bryony lured Maya off to. When I got back to the dorm on Monday, Maya wasn't there. Saren whispered to me, "Maya's not back yet, and it's so late. Where could she be?" I just smiled and said I didn't know. Where else could she be? She's probably been cornered by Bryony's brother. Bryony came out of the bathroom, went straight to Maya's spot, and started slathering Maya's creams and potions all over her own face. She kept applying the lotion while declaring with righteous indignation, "Anyway, Maya's going to be my sister-in-law soon. What's hers is ours, so don't you dare say she's been sponsoring me anymore. All that help she gave me before was just her trying to earn her place in our family. Honestly, using me to build up her good person image for the school newspaper. Anyway, Maya won't have it bad once she marries my brother. If she can give him a son, our family will treat her right. Don't think being a college student makes her special. For a girl, the most important thing is getting married and having a son." These words were exactly the same as in my past life. She just redirected that same self-righteous attitude she had with me onto Maya. I just smiled without a word, knowing full well that Maya's easy days were over. Bryony's own personal hell was about to begin. 11. It was a full week before Maya returned to school. She looked terrible, bundled up in long sleeves and pants, her gaze toward Bryony sharp and murderous. Her eyes suddenly shifted to me. Aloan, is your family going bankrupt? I stared back at her coldly, offering no reply. Maya chuckled lightly. How could a family just go bankrupt like that? Who do you think you're fooling? Maya actually has a bit of sense. Bryony caught on too, asking me in shock. Your family isn't bankrupt. Before I could say a word, Maya spoke up. Bryony, you're so gullible. She only said her family went bankrupt because she doesn't want you clinging to her. A glint of calculation flashed in Bryony's eyes before she fell silent. Within a few days, Bryony and Maya had made up. They would often sneak glances at me. I knew exactly what they were scheming, but I pretended to be completely oblivious. Back in the dorm, I asked Saren, no classes this afternoon, feel like going shopping? Saren nodded. We got ourselves ready and headed out. We shopped all afternoon and didn't get back until after 7 in the evening. I carefully saved the voice recorder I had hidden under the pillow, planning to listen to it with headphones when I went to bed that night. Saren and I had been walking for quite a while in the afternoon before Bryony and Maya's voices finally came through. Maya said, help your brother win over Aloan. And I'll give you back those photos. Bryony had completely dropped the act by then. Relax, now that the Aloan family isn't bankrupt. My brother wouldn't even want you, Maya. Let's trick Aloan into going up the mountain this Saturday. Just the two of us. You make sure your brother is waiting there. Bryony said worriedly. Do you think Aloan will take the bait? Maya, we have to at least try. I smiled. How could I possibly refuse their well-intentioned plan? If they're going to be so unrepentant, then I won't hold back either. Go to hell, you two bitches. Early the next morning, just after I got up, Bryony came over to apologize. Aloan, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that to you the other day. I said with feigned nonchalance. I lied because I didn't want you pestering me. Just stop playing the victim in front of me all the time, and I can let it go. Bryony's expression brightened slightly. Aloan, we're all in the same dorm. Let's just forget about the past, okay? I knew she was making her move, so I played along. All right then, Bryony suggested. Maya and I planned an autumn outing to Lingshui Village this weekend. You should come with us. I shook my head. No, I can't. I'm going home this weekend. Come on, Aloan. We've never been out together. Bryony took my hand and gave it a little shake. I made a few more half-hearted excuses before reluctantly agreeing, having lived a life before. My acting skills were now absolutely flawless, Saren said. I'll pass, I have something on that day. Bryony didn't press Saren to go. Saren and I exchanged a glance before quickly looking away. Bryony didn't notice. On Saturday, I drove Bryony and Maya to Lingshui Village. The two of them took me up into the hills. Yellow leaves drifted down. Bryony and Maya said they were going to the restroom and told me to wait right here. Not long after they left, someone darted out from behind me and grabbed me. It was Bryony's brother, Kian. Just as he was about to reach me, I pulled out the pepper spray I had ready and sprayed it right into Kian's eyes. Kian let out a sharp cry. Stumbling backward with his hands clamped over his eyes, he tripped over a rock and fell to the ground. I stood over him, looking down at his wretched state, and kicked him hard several times until he lost his balance and tumbled down the hillside. Hearing the commotion, Bryony and Maya came running back. Aloan. What have you done to my brother? Maya pulled out her phone. Aloan, how could you hit someone? I'm calling the police. Saren had been hiding on the mountain all along. She had recorded everything Kian just did to me, saved the footage, and was now holding up her phone again. No need for the trouble. I already called the police. As soon as the words were spoken, the sound of sirens echoed from nearby, and the police arrived. Bryony and Maya exchanged a glance. Their faces instantly paling. They clearly hadn't expected me to move that fast. Of course, my parents deserve some credit for the police arriving so quickly. Before coming to Lingshui Village, I tipped off my parents about Bryony and Maya's little scheme. I put myself in harm's way to help round up the whole lot of them, and just like that, Bryony, Maya, and even Kian were taken away by the police. Saren and I went together to give our statements. 12. Kian was arrested for attempted rape. Maya also had a complete falling out with Bryony. Kian took photos while assaulting her. She was initially afraid to speak out, fearing the photos would be leaked. Given the circumstances, she had no choice but to play the victim card, seeking sympathy and pleading for leniency from the law. With their son facing a long prison sentence, Bryony's parents were wailing and carrying on outside the police station. I walked over and told them, "This was all planned by your precious daughter. She resents your favoritism toward your son and used me to get rid of her brother. You'd better keep a close eye on your younger son." Bryony's father was furious. The day she was released from custody, he dragged her straight into the car and took her home. I heard later that Bryony was beaten to death by her own father. After all, she was the reason he lost his beloved eldest son, in that impoverished mountain village. The rule of law was virtually non-existent. Bryony's father buried her right then and there, without even a coffin. Later, for $30,000, Bryony's father had her exhumed and arranged a ghost marriage for her with a 40-year-old bachelor who had died without ever taking a wife. Maya, on the other hand, was expelled from school. One day, Saren told me, "Maya is pregnant." I hid my surprise and asked, "How do you know?" Saren smiled and said, "She was too scared to go to a major hospital, so she went to a small clinic. It just so happened to be run by my aunt, and I was there that day too." I passed this news on to the Zhao family. Maya was being hounded by the Zhao family again, because she was carrying their bloodline. Maya's parents were ashamed of their daughter and disowned her, allowing the Zhao family to take her away. In the first semester of my sophomore year, I came across news about Maya online, in a place called Zhaojiago. A family of 4 was killed by their daughter-in-law. The trigger was that the daughter-in-law, Maya, had terminated her pregnancy. Meanwhile, the family's eldest son was in prison, serving a sentence of over 6 years for 2 rape cases, and couldn't get out. To carry on the family line, the family ultimately decided that the father-in-law would sleep with his daughter-in-law until she became pregnant. When the eldest son returned, the child would be given to him as his own. Calling its biological father Grandpa, Maya couldn't accept this. That night, when her father-in-law forced himself on her, she ended his life with a knife. Then, Maya killed the other 3 family members overnight and fled. There was a wanted notice below the news article. A reward of 100,000 is offered for any information leading to Maya's whereabouts. I forced myself to read the entire report, sickened by its contents. This is exactly the kind of thing the Zhao family would do. They got what they deserved. As for Maya, my parents were worried she'd come after me, so they kept an eye on her movements. When we helped the police find her, she was curled up under a bridge, reeking of filth, with disheveled hair, looking utterly inhuman. By the time my parents and I arrived, she already had her hands cuffed by the police. Maya, I called out to her just before she got into the police car. Maya straightened up and looked over. A single bloodshot eye peered out from the mess of her hair. When she saw it was me, Maya's eye widened, and the next second, she burst into a fit of hysterical laughter. In the end, she was shoved into the police car by the officers. Ultimately, Maya was sentenced to death for murder under particularly heinous circumstances. On the day the verdict was announced, I went to the courthouse to observe the proceedings. Stepping out of the courthouse, I looked up at the clear blue sky and let out a long, deep sigh of relief. My parents were calling for me from below. I got in the car, and they drove me to school. The drive was smooth all the way, and my future life has only just begun. Story 2. In our past life, my best friend and I were imprisoned by the train conductor. I was forced to bear his child, while she refused his advances. As punishment, he made her do the hardest and filthiest labor. After our rescue, the detective who saved us married me out of pity, vowing to accept my unborn child. Though my friend kept her virtue, she remained alone and destitute her entire life. Reborn into this life, we've returned to the moment of our captivity. The old crone who aided our imprisonment pushed open the door, fixing us with a sinister grin. My best friend and I just woke up from being drugged, exchanged a glance, and instantly understood. We'd both been reborn. Neither of us spoke, waiting silently for the old woman to begin. You must already know your fate. Now you have only 2 choices: die in agony, or bear children for our train conductor. I'll bear the train conductor's children. Before I could respond, my best friend immediately spoke up. In my past life, I was the one who made this choice. My friend would rather die than submit to the train conductor's assault, which led to our completely different fates. But in this second chance at life, I'd sooner die than have anything to do with that conductor again. The old crone gave a sinister chuckle upon hearing this. What a wise decision. And so my friend followed the old woman out of the holding cell. As my best friend left, she couldn't help but glance back at me, raising an eyebrow with a smug smile that seemed to say, "I'm going to take everything you have." I kept my head down, consumed by thoughts of escape. About 2 hours later, my friend returned disheveled, though she looked thoroughly satisfied despite her messy appearance. When she came back, the old woman turned to me again. "And you, what's your choice?" I shrank back in fear and blurted out, "I'll do anything you ask. Just don't let the train conductor touch me." My best friend shot me a disdainful glance. A mocking smile played across her face. Even after being reborn, she's still making such foolish choices. Fine, let me endure the suffering while she waits to get pregnant by the conductor and live the high life. Because I refused to be imprisoned by the trainmaster, I was treated like a slave, beaten daily, burdened with endless tasks, and fed nothing but spoiled food. A month after the transfer, my best friend indeed became pregnant with the trainmaster's child. The pregnancy was clearly abnormal. Her belly swelled unnaturally large within weeks. Blissfully unaware, she was pampered like royalty. granted every whim, even escorted by elderly women who fretted over her every step lest harm befall the unborn child. Her smile widened each time she saw me groveling like an insect beneath her notice. Once, as I scrubbed the toilet floor on hands and knees, she approached beaming, then accidentally planted her foot atop my trembling hand. Oops, I'm so sorry, but even as she apologized, she stomped down with such vicious force that my face contorted in pain. With that creepy old woman glaring at me, I had no choice but to grit my teeth and bear it. My best friend glanced at her caretaker, then deliberately shooed the old woman away, clearly wanting to share some private words with me. Granny Matilda, I suddenly crave braised pork trotters. Have the kitchen prepare some for me. Certainly, madam, I'll instruct the chef immediately. The old woman replied sweetly to her friend before shooting me a venomous glare, a silent warning against harming her precious mistress. When we were finally alone, my so-called friend glanced at the attendants patrolling outside our compartment. She sidled closer and whispered, I know we're both waiting for Hayden's rescue, but this time, he'll marry me out of pity. Everything that was rightfully yours will become mine. Enjoy your lonely spinsterhood. I stared at my best friend in disbelief as she finished her sentence with a smile, shaking my head helplessly. You should get rid of that child as soon as possible. Keeping it will bring endless trouble. Get rid of it. My friend burst into laughter as if hearing the most absurd joke. This child is my lucky charm, my bargaining chip to take Hayden from you. I'd protect it with my life. Why would I ever consider getting rid of it? It won't be your lifeline, it'll be your death warrant. I pleaded earnestly, listen to me, there's still time to terminate it now. Stop lying to me. You're just terrified Hayden will leave you for me, afraid my unborn child will steal the happiness that was rightfully yours. My best friend let out a cold laugh. Seeing she wouldn't listen to reason, I chose silence. Deep down I knew even if she wanted to harm this baby, it'd be impossible. Madam, the braised pork trotters are ready. Please come dine. A chilling male voice came from outside the compartment, the voice of a train attendant. Noted, my friend said with haughty pride, then smirked at me. I'm off to enjoy braised trotters while you'll grovel like a dog eating scraps. After she left, an attendant shot me a sinister glance, as if warning me not to meddle. At mealtime, a female attendant appeared like a ghost, placing before me a dog bowl filled with rancid food that reeked of decay. After she left, I immediately dumped the spoiled food into the toilet and flushed it away. Then I retrieved my hidden stash, eating furtively in the bathroom. Afraid of running out too quickly, I rationed myself to small portions each time, praying it would last until rescue. This food was originally packed by my family. They'd stuffed a whole suitcase full of provisions fearing I wouldn't eat well on the trip. After realizing I was imprisoned, I hid the suitcase. My so-called best friend, now dining on delicacies daily, seems to have forgotten how in our past life when she suffered abuse and ate rotten scraps, I shared my own food with her. Never did I imagine that after being reborn, she'd treat me this way, as if my torment brought her some perverse joy. After sneaking a few bites of food, I hid the remaining stash back in the toilet tank before crawling out slowly to resume scrubbing the floor on all fours, pressed against the window while cleaning the glass. The rushing scenery outside filled me with longing, but knowing this ordeal would soon end, I steeled myself to keep going. This was far better than my past life. Back then I lived in constant terror under the trainmaster's tyranny with no future in sight. Now salvation was certain, and that hope sustained me. A sudden chill ran down my spine. Whirling around, I found myself staring into the dead, emotionless eyes of a pale-faced man looming behind me. A shiver of terror ran down my spine. He was the train conductor, the source of nightmares for me and my best friend. As his ghastly hand reached toward me, I felt an unnatural chill from his touch. Trembling uncontrollably, I couldn't utter a word. The conductor pinned me down violently and began tearing at my clothes. This wasn't unfamiliar. In my past life, he'd forced himself on me countless times. Though I'd pretend compliance, his corpse-like pallor always left me petrified, desperate to flee. Every single encounter became an act of brutal coercion. Going through it again, my fear of him grew even stronger. The mere thought of being intimate with him made me nauseous, and I actually vomited. Just as the train conductor was about to force himself on me, I suddenly retched and spewed a mouthful of sour bile. The germophobic conductor immediately released me and stormed off in fury, after which his lackeys gave me a brutal beating. This wasn't an isolated incident. Though every attempt ended with me vomiting on him, it only deepened his disgust toward me, and intensified my torment. How foolish I was. I'd rather suffer than let that man touch me. Never thought you'd make the same mistake. My best friend watched from above as I lay battered and bloodied on the floor, beaten by the train conductor's men. I stayed silent, waiting for my hero to come. My friend was waiting too, though neither of us knew how this would end. But she'd always believed changing past choices could alter fate. Now she waited eagerly for that moment when everything would be different. As the day drew near, my so-called best friend visited me more frequently. When she saw me battered and bloodied, there was no pity in her eyes, only smug satisfaction, like she was watching a pathetic clown. "Lillian, you know what? I've always envied you. Why should you have everything I couldn't? Well, guess what? I'm about to take it all away from you." My heavily pregnant friend stood there in her high heels, looking down at my tattered clothes and filthy appearance with triumphant laughter. "I always considered you my closest friend. I shared everything with you. Why did you have to hate me? I can't understand why my best friend would treat me like this. Give it to me. You're just rubbing it in my face." My best friend glared at me resentfully. "That's not true. I genuinely consider you my closest friend," I tried to explain. "Your closest friend? Then why won't you give Hayden to me?" my best friend demanded aggressively. "Hayden and I are engaged. We've had this arrangement for years. How could I possibly back out now?" I replied in astonishment. "You're just being selfish. You have everything, even snatching the good men. You keep calling me your best friend. Why won't you give me your fiancé?" Her expression twisted with fury as she spoke. "That's completely different," I retorted. "I don't want to hear this from you. Just wait, Hayden will come rescue us soon, and he'll marry me, not you." My best friend's words left me with mixed emotions. She wasn't wrong. Hayden would indeed come to our rescue, but whether he'd choose to marry me or her was anyone's guess. Suddenly, the train lurched violently, followed by a wave of chaotic noise. My best friend and I exchanged an inexplicable glance. I just knew Hayden had arrived. Suddenly, the train car fell into complete silence as we all held our breaths. Seconds ticked by until abruptly, the compartment doors swung open, revealing a strikingly handsome face beneath a police cap, his presence commanding and dignified. This was the face I could never tire of gazing at, yet now my heart churned with conflicting emotions. The moment Hayden appeared, my best friend couldn't contain herself and threw herself into his arms, clinging to him tightly. "Hayden, I knew you'd come to save me. I've been waiting for you all this time." Hayden froze momentarily, his gaze landing on my disheveled state before finally snapping back to reality and hastily pushing my best friend away. "Lillian, I'm sorry I'm late." Her oblivious best friend stubbornly grabbed Hayden's arm again. "Hayden, during my captivity, the train conductor forced himself on me. Now I'm carrying his child. You can't abandon me." The distraught friend broke into uncontrollable sobs. You're pregnant." Hayden gasped in renewed shock, sensing an opportunity. Willow turned on the waterworks with delicate sobs. "Hayden, you're all I have now. You won't abandon me, will you?" Hayden rubbed his temples impatiently. He summoned another officer and instructed, "Escort Miss Willow home." With that, Hayden bent down and scooped me up from the ground himself. My best friend stared in disbelief at Hayden, who wasn't even looking her way. "Hayden, I'm the one who needs you most right now. Can't you see that? Take her away," Hayden said with icy detachment. My best friend grew frantic, refusing to leave as she desperately clung to Hayden. "Hayden, you'll take responsibility for me, won't you? You'll marry me." I watched the scene unfold with icy detachment. Hayden seemed anxious to avoid misunderstanding as he hastily replied, "Miss Willow, we're complete strangers. Why should I be responsible for you? Besides, I'm already engaged. How could I possibly marry you? No, this can't be right. It just can't be," my best friend muttered inexplicably. "Lillian, let me take you home. Your parents are waiting for you," Hayden said while putting his arm around my shoulders. I remained silent and followed Hayden as we walked away from my friend. "Lillian, what underhanded tricks did you pull? How could Hayden choose you over me? This wasn't supposed to happen." My best friend grabbed me violently, demanding answers in a harsh tone. I pushed her hand away and replied coldly, "I didn't resort to any tricks. It's only natural Hayden chose me, after all. I'm his fiancé." Deliberately glancing at her swollen belly, I added with a scornful laugh, "Besides, you're carrying another man's child now. Hayden would never take you back." My best friend's face turned deathly pale in an instant. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. It shouldn't be this way." My friend sobbed uncontrollably, genuine tears streaming down her face. "In our past life it was different. He said he married you out of pity, that if he didn't, no one would. So why, when I was equally defiled, carrying another man's child, why did he reject me?" "Stop this nonsense. We have no connection whatsoever," Hayden snapped, pushing her aside as he shielded me and led me away. I glanced back to see my heartbroken friend being dragged away, utterly devastated. After the successful rescue, Hayden became even more attentive to me, visiting almost daily and going out of his way to ensure I never felt neglected or hurt. "Lillian, I'm ready to make you my wife. When will you say yes?" Hayden knelt on one knee before me, asking with a warm smile. Gazing into Hayden's handsome face, I asked, "Do you love me?" "Of course I love you," Hayden said hastily. I'll marry you, I told him. This is wonderful, Lillian, I finally get to marry you. Hayden was about to embrace me in excitement, but seeing my indifferent expression, he thought better of it. He looked like he'd been waiting for this day forever, and hadn't he? By my calculations, my best friend was nearly due to give birth. Hayden was so preoccupied with wedding preparations that everything else fell by the wayside. On our wedding day, he stood sharp in his suit, beaming at guests as they arrived, but when I failed to show, whispers spread through the crowd, and Hayden's expression darkened by the minute. This was always meant to be a brideless wedding. Since I'd never show up at the altar, I entered my best friend's rented apartment to find her writhing in agony on the bed, struggling through labor alone. Lillian, are you happy seeing me like this? My best friend's face twisted into something monstrous as she stared at me. Of course I'm delighted. I pulled up a chair right in front of my best friend, watching her face contort with labor pains. Lillian, what are you doing here now? My best friend eyed me warily. What do you think I'm doing? Watching you die. My best friend's face turned ashen as she struggled to reach out and grab me. I won't die. I'll never die, Lillian. As long as I draw breath, I swear I'll take everything from you. I shook my head, dismissing her words as delirious rambling. You know what today is? It's my wedding day with Hayden. My best friend froze when she heard me say that. Do you know why I'm here? I asked her. She couldn't respond, just stared at me intensely. Because I refused to marry him, he's tainted. I laughed. My best friend still didn't get my meaning, her eyes filled with utter confusion. Did you really think your little scheme was foolproof? I've sensed something fishy all along. I just couldn't bring myself to believe it. My fiancé who kept professing his love, and my closest friend, secretly making eyes at each other behind my back. Why, you knew. My friend froze mid-step. I know everything, including how you and Hayden plotted to lure me onto that train, planning a fatal accident. Too bad your perfect murder got derailed by boarding the wrong damn vehicle. You're lying. How could I ever do that to you? My best friend's face paled with fear before she forced composure. And Hayden, impossible. You're getting married soon. What would he gain from killing you? Exactly. I kept asking myself that until I got a second chance at life. Now I see it. Hayden never loved me. He just coveted my status as the police chief's daughter. My connections fast-tracked his career, and if anything happened to me, a grieving widower act would still earn him my father's patronage. Why would he pass up such a perfect scheme? I smirked bitterly. A man like that would have schemed at every turn even if we married. Knowing the truth now, how could I possibly let him win? My yes to his proposal was pure theater. I only wanted to turn him into a laughingstock. When did you find out Hayden and I were planning to kill you? Whether from labor pains or being terrified by my calm demeanor, my best friend's beautiful face had drained of all color. When you and Hayden were scheming on that train, by the time I realized it was too late, that two-faced Hayden had already disembarked as the train departed. I was on edge wondering when you'd strike, never expecting we'd all end up imprisoned. I sighed heavily at this point, overwhelmed by emotions I couldn't even begin to understand myself. I kept staring calmly at my best friend as something slid from between her legs, her expression twisted into something grotesque. If you knew everything, why were you so kind to me during my imprisonment in our past life? Have you forgotten how we became friends? Back in school when everyone shunned me, you were the only one who reached out. All these years I've considered you my closest confidant. I never even blamed you after learning about you and Hayden. Stop your pathetic act. Did you think I didn't know you befriended me just to flaunt your superiority? My family was poor. You even paid my tuition. You just wanted to keep me beneath your heel forever. My friend screamed hysterically. If that's what you think, I can't help it. I shook my head. Jealousy had twisted her beyond recognition. What's there to gloat about? Lillian, the man you adore loves me, not you. He said you're insufferably dull. If you weren't the commissioner's daughter, who'd bother playing this charade with you? Does Hayden even love you? I scoffed. He only loves himself. Truth is, I never cared for him, just settled because he seemed convenient. Now I see that man isn't worthy of me. You're just jealous, my so-called friend sneered, barely containing her glee. Hayden chose me, and it kills you. Admit it. You're heartbroken. Here you are about to marry him, yet he'd rather be with me. If Hayden truly loved you, why didn't he marry you after my death? Do you really think he cares? You were just a fling to him. I scoffed. I couldn't help but laugh at her sheer ignorance. What do you mean by that? My best friend stared at me in confusion. In our past life, Hayden married me, but after the wedding, he completely neglected me. He wasn't even there when I gave birth. After I died, he put on this grieving widower act, only to turn around and marry the mayor's daughter. By then, he'd already forgotten you ever existed. No way. Hayden said he loves me. How could he forget me? My best friend refused to believe me, shooting me a venomous glare. You're just trying to drive us apart. I stared back at her with bitter amusement. Why would I bother lying to her? Besides, I knew she'd be dead soon, just as miserably as I'd died in my past life. When she noticed me fixated on the pool of blood beneath her, sheer terror took over. She clutched my arm desperately, pleading, "I can't do this. I don't want the baby anymore. Lillian, aren't I your best friend? Please, help me get to the hospital. Just get rid of it. I don't want it. It's too late." As I uttered those words, my best friend's grip on my hand suddenly jerked backward as if yanked by an invisible force, sending her sprawling motionless onto the bed. She stared at me with disbelieving eyes, convinced I was behind this. "Don't look at me like that. I don't have that kind of power," I whispered into her ear. "The moment we boarded that train, we became the chosen ones. Everyone aboard was an alien entity, even their food was parasitic. In our past life, you survived only because you ate what I brought. Yet instead of gratitude, you joined those monsters in humiliating me. That's why I told you nothing, all for this moment." I chuckled darkly. My best friend glared at me with pure hatred, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly as her abdomen convulsed like boiling water bubbling violently. Her expression grew increasingly horrifying as excruciating, tearing pain racked her body. "Remember this, what's killing you is the demon child in your womb." The moment I uttered demon child, my best friend's eyes bulged bloodshot. Suddenly, a horned monstrosity burst from her womb, a bloodthirsty infantile fiend that swiftly devoured her dying body. In my past life, this was how I, seemingly blessed in everyone's eyes, met my gruesome end alone in that delivery room, after finishing its meal. The demon child lunged at me, standing firm. I produced the talisman gifted by the master. Chanting his incantation, the cursed creature recoiled from the charm's power. Biting my finger, I flicked a blood droplet onto its flesh as the talisman seared into its body. The demon child froze instantly. With satisfaction, I approached and issued my first command. "From now on, you shall address me as your honored mother. No, you shall be my woman from this day forth." Suddenly, the demon child broke free from his restraints, transforming into a grown man who pulled me into his embrace. I smiled. Story 2. In the week before the apocalypse, my dad moved his mistress and her daughter into our home, intending to force my mom into a divorce. My mom, however, refused, not because she couldn't let go of a man who had betrayed her, but because she couldn't bear to lose the wealth they had built together from scratch. She despised the thought of him kicking her aside to elevate his lowly mistress to a position of comfort. Thus, a dispute over marital assets began. As the end of the world approached, 6 of us were crammed into a small 90-square-meter house, desperately short on supplies. In this lawless new world, physical strength dictated authority. My parents were divided, each vying for the precious few resources. I had thought my 20-year-old brother would stand by us unconditionally. Instead, he had fallen for Charlotte, the mistress's daughter, acting like her devoted servant. Overly concerned for her well-being, they formed a unit, my dad, his mistress, her daughter, and my brother, against my mom and me. We were relegated to the bathroom, left to survive on their scraps every few days. We had considered fighting back, but the new world was not governed by laws but by survival of the fittest. My mom, a housewife, and I, too timid, were left battered and bruised without any chance to retaliate. Not only were we starved, but we also had to endure the taunts of Grace and Charlotte. Before the apocalypse, my mom was keen on stockpiling goods, but even a well-stocked home can only sustain so many people for so long. Eventually, to prevent us from dying and rotting inside the home, they threw us out to the zombies. My mom knelt, begging them to spare me as she continuously bowed her head in a plea, her once proud demeanor gone, her forehead bloodied. We all knew that staying inside the locked house was safer than facing certain death or freezing outside. She offered to leave on her own to gather supplies if they would just let me stay. As I came to my senses, I saw Elijah pushing my mom to the ground just as he had pushed me earlier. It was clear that even before the apocalypse, their true natures had revealed themselves. Biting back my anger, I stood up without any hope and glanced at my indifferent dear brother Dylan, then turned my fierce gaze to Elijah and the mother-daughter duo behind him. "What kind of look is that, Lily?" Elijah sneered at me, unrespectful and spoiled. "You should learn from your sister Charlotte, learn from her, how to seduce others." I thought about biting off his rude finger the moment I got the chance. Before I could act, my mom stood up, shielding me. Her voice was eerily calm compared to her disheveled appearance. "I agreed to the divorce," she said. "You can have the son, I'll take my daughter. I just want $2 million and this house." Elijah agreed without a second thought. To him, the house and the money were insignificant compared to his thriving business. He even questioned, "You're not trying to scam me, are you?" Standing behind him, Grace immediately took his arm, her smile both triumphant and sly. "Madam, I didn't intend to break up your family. It was only after we fell in love that I learned he was married. But then, why would he choose me over someone like you?" As I clenched my fists, ready to punch her smug face, my mom's calloused hand gently enveloped mine. Of course, I don't blame you. What's there to gloat about taking over a rotten cucumber from me? Mom scoffed, her face darkening. I give you 2 minutes to get off my property, have 2 million ready for me by tomorrow morning or I might change my mind, and I want it in cash. The group hastily scattered like birds and beasts, even Dylan hesitated before following behind Charlotte. Mom's aggression faded instantly as she turned to look at me, as I stood confused. She tenderly touched my swollen forehead. Lily, Mom is here. My eyes suddenly welled up with tears. The facade of strength I had been maintaining crumbled. I had thought I would have to face a harsh world and the wicked hearts of people alone for the rest of my life. I was simultaneously relieved and terrified, but Mom said she was here. We quickly adjusted our emotions, preparing for the impending apocalypse. It took us over 2 hours to clear out the belongings of the father and son. Along with some unnecessary clutter, our modest 90-square-meter home suddenly had 2 rooms freed up. It also made it easier to store supplies for the future. While Mom went downstairs to throw out the trash, I squatted over the coffee table planning what to buy. Thanks to the developed internet, there was a wealth of information available. I searched essential supplies for the apocalypse on some platform and instantly got thousands of responses. I saved a highly upvoted post and listed all the items and quantities it mentioned. We planned to stock up on staples like rice, flour, oil in dozens of boxes, as well as essential items like sugar and various vitamins and minerals. In the past, the Elijah father-son duo, despite being the strongest, never went out to gather supplies. They only ventured out in the community when starvation became imminent, and by then, supplies were scarce. The little they found was barely enough even when the 4 of them fought over it. Mom and I didn't even get those scraps. We survived by drinking water in the bathroom. Eventually, we were skeletal, with stomachs bloated like water-filled balloons. I quickly divided the shopping list into tasks for 2 people. Although we had a week, some items wouldn't be delivered in a day or 2. Buying too much at once could raise suspicions. Splitting up the shopping tasks would make it quicker, Lily. I think we need to reinforce the house a bit more, Mom said, panting as she leaned on the doorframe. The belongings of those 2 were indeed numerous. She had made 7 or 8 trips with the biggest bags. From what we experienced in the past, besides the lack of supplies, our home was safe, but we must remain cautious. We don't know how long the apocalypse will last, or if the situation will change, and we don't know if those 4 scumbags will have the audacity to try and take over our home. I saw the deep worry in Mom's furrowed brow. Our previous ordeal was too painful, which is why we cherish this miraculous second chance. So, I plan to replace the windows with bulletproof glass and the main door with an armored one. We'll also weld an iron door outside for double protection. Indeed. Safety is paramount in an apocalypse. No matter how discreetly we gather supplies, 2 women hoarding a large amount of resources would undoubtedly attract attention. The human heart is unpredictable in the apocalypse, but we clearly understood Elijah and their intentions from our previous life. I poured her a glass of cool water to help her relax. I agree, but won't hiring someone to install these be too conspicuous? Living peacefully and then suddenly fortifying our home would definitely draw attention. Once the apocalypse hits and people regain their senses, our small 90-square-meter house would still be a target, especially for those coming out to scavenge for supplies. Mom patted my hand comfortingly. I thought about this the whole way when I was taking out the trash. We can't avoid leaving traces with all the supplies we're buying, so we need to do the fortification right. We'll hire workers from out of town, and I've already thought of a reason. I perked up, quickly asking, what reason? Just as she was about to speak, Dylan suddenly appeared behind us. He stood there hesitating, awkwardly scratching his head. Mom, what are you talking about? When did Dylan come back? This wasn't part of the past life. My expression stiffened. Indeed, the wings fluttered lightly. Everything changes. Why did you even come back if you're not going to be the stepmom to your father's mistress? Her mother realized what she was saying, looked at her coldly, and spoke with a tone devoid of emotion but filled with irony. Mom, don't speak so harshly. I know you hold a grudge over Dad's affair, but love can't be forced. Just think of it as. Dylan heard Ella sarcastically mocking Elijah and Grace and quickly became defensive on their behalf. Though he quietly conceded that he didn't have much ground to stand on. Sigh. Just think of it as you and Dad not being meant to be. Mom, I didn't come back to apologize to you. I just came to grab some clothes. I'm planning to stay at Auntie's place for a while. You don't need to be so harsh. Auntie is really nice. Charlotte has been feeling guilty about breaking up our family, too. Besides, asking Dad for $2 million has drained all his available cash. He's now frantically trying to gather more money. We can't afford a hotel anymore. We just have to squeeze into Auntie's small apartment for now. We've both gone backwards. Causing harm to both sides doesn't solve anything. Can't we just sit down together peacefully and talk things out? Dylan shook his head in disappointment, walked into the house, and was immediately shocked. Mom, where are my things? His mother scoffed coldly. In the garbage bin downstairs. Go dig them out yourself. Dylan, furious, threw his hat to the ground in a gesture of anger. Growing up, Elijah's family always favored boys over girls, and Dylan, favored by Elijah and those back home, grew up very self-centered. I remember when he was young and wrote an essay about his family for school, he described himself as the little emperor, Elijah as the retired emperor, and my mom and I as the head and secondary maidservants. Ella, was that really necessary? No wonder Dad chose Auntie. No one can stand being with a woman like you. Don't think throwing my things away will provoke me. Dad and everyone always pampered me. Only you, always demanding this and that. I've long stopped recognizing you as my mom. His mother was visibly upset, even though Dylan was heartless in his previous life. Hearing him admit it outright was still chilling. She wiped her tears fiercely, as if severing the maternal bond of so many years. Just go. I'll pretend I don't have a son anymore. Go tell your father that if I don't see 2 million by the time I wake up tomorrow, I'll reconsider and fight him for the company shares. I have evidence of his affair. Dylan turned and left. I've never felt much affection for this brother, even less so with the knowledge of his past life. I called out to him with a challenging look. Brother, make sure you won't regret this. Dylan turned back with a disdainful snort. I'm sticking with Dad. If anyone should regret, it's you. To facilitate Elijah bringing the money the next day, the door code was intentionally left unchanged. With a pressing timeline, my mom and I took the money and went on a big shopping spree. Women have a knack for shopping. We reserved $600,000 for reinforcing the house and used the remaining $1,400,000 along with our savings to buy supplies, to keep a low profile. We rented a small warehouse near our neighborhood in advance. This allowed us to quietly transport supplies to our house late at night. The purchase priority was staple foods. Recalling the hunger and weakness from my previous life was enough to understand its necessity. Rice, noodles, compressed biscuits. This secured our basic food needs for a long time. Next, we bought perishable items like meat, eggs, dairy, spices, vegetables, fruits, and high-calorie snacks. This apocalypse was more severe than any described in novels, with not only cannibalistic zombies to worry about but also extreme weather later on. Household items, medical supplies, energy solutions, and protective gear were also on our list of essentials to buy. The day after receiving the money, contractors from out of town came to install armored doors, bulletproof glass, soundproof panels, and blackout curtains. The noise of construction lasted all day. When neighbors came to inquire, my mom was prepared. Her eyes reddened, and she hesitated as if lost for words. My son has been diagnosed with a mental illness, my mother announced, causing a collective gasp among the neighbors who had gathered due to the noise. Really? They asked, shocked. My mother wiped away non-existent tears and nodded. There's no need to be afraid. He's not aggressive. The doctor said it's paranoia. He's constantly worried that someone is trying to kill him. He thinks everyone outside is a murderer. And he's even afraid that his food might be poisoned. Just the other day, he was begging me to change all the doors and windows in the house because he was afraid of a robbery. She continued, oh, what am I going to do with this son of mine? Yeah, it seems like a few days since we last saw your son Dylan, a neighbor remarked, trying to hide their discomfort and unable to say much else in the way of consolation, after my mother handed out bags of Thai jasmine rice as gifts. The neighbors expressed their understanding even more vocally. This small package of Thai jasmine rice was an extra gift from the rice merchant during a bulk purchase, and we still had several packages left in the living room. Mental illness is not something to be proud of, and I'm afraid of people discriminating against my son. Please, I ask all of you neighbors not to spread the word, my mother pleaded. They assured her repeatedly, influenced by the gifts they had received. That evening, I couldn't help but laugh when I heard about this. I guessed that with these neighbors' propensity to gossip, the news about Dylan's mental illness would spread everywhere, but the renovation would seem less interesting, since we paid generously for an expedited service. The reinforcement of the house was already 70% complete after just 2 days and would probably be finished by the following morning. Fortunately, my mother was constantly supervising the work, so there was no worry about cutting corners. The storage was nearly full, and with more supplies arriving from online shopping the next day, we needed to quickly move things into the house to make room for the new arrivals. With only half a day left before the apocalypse, my mother and I decided to go out and enjoy a lavish meal. In a silent agreement, we reserved 1,000 yuan to spend on a feast at the best mall, planning to also take some food home for the next couple of days. These days, from the moment we woke up, we were busy purchasing various supplies and monitoring the reinforcement process. It was exhausting, but we felt secure. Sister, a female voice halted my mother and me as we strolled, and I gripped the shopping cart tighter, feeling annoyed. Charlotte, holding Grace's hand, also called out, Sister, Mom, you haven't been hiding and having illegitimate wild seeds out there, have you? I questioned sarcastically. Of course not. I'm not that irresponsible, my mother replied. Grace and Charlotte's faces darkened momentarily, but seeing the cart full of food, they confidently flaunted their designer shopping bags. Yo, Ella, why only buy food for Lily? They teased. Weren't you given $2 million? Although, that's hardly enough. Charlotte and I nearly spent tens of thousands just on clothes today, Grace boasted smugly, with Charlotte echoing her delight. They're blaming you for tying up his funds. He promised to buy us houses and designer bags soon. They continued provocatively, Aunt Ella just looks too plain, she's not into these things, they giggled, underestimating my preference. Hearing their words, I secretly rejoiced inside. Why did my mother only ask for $2 million? Because that was all the cash Elijah could access at the moment. Without that money, he and Dylan would naturally have to stay at Grace's small apartment. Since they were so lovingly united in their past life, let them be locked in together in this life too. Their smiles were triumphant, but I indulged them, let them laugh. After they go home and change into their new clothes, they'll be the most fashionable zombies in the apocalypse. My mother and I watched the two blissfully ignorant girls puff up with pride, thinking about how fortunate they really were in their past lives. Unfortunately, what goes around comes around, but before their comeuppance, I still wanted to teach them a small lesson. I quietly let go of my mother's hand and, while they were still laughing and giggling, I rushed forward and slapped them hard 3 times, 1 slap for the younger one, and 2 for the elder. Why are you destroying my family? My dad is old, ugly, and messy, doesn't wash his hair for 3 days and doesn't bathe for 4. How could you stoop so low? And you, his daughter, people might think you're her mom, but those who don't know might think you're a madam, leading my brother to forsake even his own mother. You've even become audacious enough to step over the original wife. Everyone should seriously avoid these 2 people. Initially, they thought of retaliating, but my tirade drew a crowd of onlookers with their smartphones, eager for the drama, not wanting to become social media news. They quickly left with darkened faces. The day turned darker quicker than usual, and my mother, wary of causing more trouble, suggested we head home. So without lingering, we drove home quickly. The streets and pedestrians were bustling as usual, everyone busy with their daily livelihood and dreams. Passing by the small warehouse we rented, my mom and I shared a knowing smile. Inside, there were still plenty of long-lasting supplies stored. With our home already filled to the brim, these extra supplies were intentionally left there. I also continuously spread doomsday predictions anonymously on various platforms, urging people to stock up on food and stay indoors. Although I got heavily criticized for it, about half a month later, there would surely be people who had run out of supplies at home and had no choice but to venture out for more. Everyone has the right to survive, and this was the greatest contribution those of us who were fortunate could make after ensuring our own safety. 11. With the security metal door locked and the armored door shut, my mom and I lay comfortably on the soft sofa in the living room, sighing in comfort. Only one of the 3 bedrooms, the master bedroom, was left for sleeping. The rest were neatly filled with supplies. The dining room even had a new freezer we had purchased, as the electricity in our neighborhood was still running for the first 3 months after the apocalypse, and we were well prepared with generators. The living room was reduced to 1/3 of its usual size, also filled with stuff. In the apocalypse, this would certainly make many envious. I lazily sipped my milk tea, stood up, and slightly drew back the blackout curtains. It was already pitch dark outside. It was only around 4 in the afternoon, and the alert ones were already vigilant. The TV was broadcasting news about unusual weather patterns, telling people not to panic but also advising them to head home early. Under the warm, dim light in the kitchen, my mom was busy stuffing today's shopping into the fridge while a small pot on the induction cooker bubbled invitingly. Mom, how long do you think it will take before they come running to us for help? I asked playfully with a hint of malice. Mom paused in her actions and softly replied, pretty soon. 12. 2 hours passed, and the outside world had turned into complete chaos. We lay in the bed of the master bedroom, watching a popular TV drama projected on the wall. In the early days of the apocalypse, utilities like water, electricity, and internet were still functioning. So my mom and I simultaneously opened our social media feeds and scrolled through the posts. Some posted thrill-seeking videos of zombies going mad, with captions like, eye-opening, are these real zombies or just some cosplayers' work? Can Android users see this animated image? Others posted in panic, asking how to stay safe while stuck in crowded areas. And some even shared pictures of their loved ones being devoured by zombies. Among the many posts, one from Grace seemed oddly out of place. Her post showed a picture of a lavish dinner and 3 pairs of hands vaguely visible around the table. The world outside is chaotic, but our times are peaceful. Comments below added, don't know what new virus has popped up, but good thing Dylan smartly stocked up on supplies a while back. We can stay safe and sound. He's really a good big son. Charlotte also commented, Mom, have you forgotten your dear daughter since you have a son now? I'm going to complain to Uncle. Dylan had also stocked up on supplies, suppressing my disgust at these sappy words. My mom and I exchanged a look, frowning as we remembered the oddities of the past few days. After Elijah and the others left that day, Dylan had returned for a bit, but even if he had eavesdropped, my mom and I hadn't discussed anything crucial. How could he have guessed to stock up on supplies? I suddenly slapped my forehead. I remember now. The shopping list I wrote was left on the coffee table. Dylan had come in and thrown a tantrum at that time. It wasn't surprising he saw those lists accidentally, but just seeing a list of various items, how could he think of stocking up in advance? Since when was Dylan so smart? Mom casually threw her phone onto the bed, saying carefree, "Lily, don't bother with it too much." Even if that ungrateful son had a moment of cleverness and stocked up on some supplies, it's nothing but a drop in the bucket for the long and hard times of the apocalypse. She patted my back repeatedly, her smile warm and affectionate. Besides, from the photos she posted, they are still living in that tiny 50-square-meter duplex. They can't store much, and with 4 people consuming, their days of comfort won't last long. The future is long. Mom had long known about Elijah's affair and even had all the details about Grace, but she turned a blind eye to preserve a complete family for me and Dylan. Returning from the Rebirth, I harbored a bit of a vengeful thrill to watch the drama unfold. Knowing that their situation wasn't as dire as I imagined made it hard to suppress my resentment, but Mom was right, the future is long. If they were to perish at the start of the zombie virus, it would have been too easy on them. The TV drama reached its latest episode. I'm not sure if there will be any follow-up, but my mom and I are feeling groggy and sleepy. At 1 a.m, a message flashed on the phone placed on the bedside table, glaring in the pitch-dark room. "Mom, I was wrong. I shouldn't have trusted those 2 adulterers who wrecked our family. I've realized my mistake, and I want to come home, elsewhere." Under the eerie blue light of his phone, Dylan's face was ghostly pale, and he was sweating profusely. Clutching his phone tightly, he curled up on the temporary bed in his apartment. He had been reborn on the first night of the apocalypse. In his previous life, he and his dad, influenced by Grace and Charlotte, had abandoned his mom and sister to a horde of zombies. Soon, they had to venture outside their community to gather supplies to fill their stomachs. It turned out that those 2 despicable women immediately ran off to a group of strong men, biting his lip. Dylan swore to steer clear of this malicious mother-daughter duo in this life. His mom and sister were decent, they now had a house and supplies and were honest. After all, they didn't know what had happened in his past life. They always accommodated him at home since he was the only son, and he suspected they must have stockpiled quite a bit of supplies. Just recently, he had inadvertently seen a list on the coffee table, which made him impulsively want to store some items at Grace's house. Dylan relaxed and lay back down, feeling secure about this lifetime. I saw last night's message too. I don't know what got into Dylan, whether he's messed up or just like us, reborn. I shook my head and continued to watch the surveillance footage. This was installed by Mom at Grace's place after she discovered Elijah's affair, initially to gather evidence for the divorce. Now, though useless as evidence, it served well for a few laughs. In the surveillance, Dylan sat on the couch, grumbling about how breakfast had only 2 stale, loose bread rolls. Grace immediately took on the demeanor of a hostess. "Dylan, didn't you check your phone? It's the apocalypse outside, and we don't know when it will end. We need to conserve resources, otherwise what will we eat later?" Dylan immediately got angry. With the zombie outbreak at its peak, the danger was immense. It was better to wait for a good opportunity and use up the resources here first. Besides, 70% of the supplies in this small apartment were bought by him. He was the rightful owner. Those 2 wretches would need his approval even for a thread or a needle. In the video, Dylan went silent for a few seconds before suddenly jumping up, snatching the milk from Grace's hand and smashing it on the floor. "All these things I bought, you give them to your daughter but not to me. Next time you favor her over me, I'll throw you out to feed the zombies." Charlotte, standing by, started to cry out of fear. Grace, wailing, complained to Elijah about how hard it was to be a stepmother, while Elijah pointed at Dylan and cursed. Entertaining. Mom and I, on the other side of the internet, laughed our heads off. As the saying goes, a villain meets a worse villain. The apocalypse came fiercely and swiftly, and everyone quickly recovered from their initial panic and fear, igniting a will to survive. As the only household that had fortified our home before the apocalypse, we naturally became the envy of others, especially when a neighbor hinted in the community group chat that they saw us pushing a cart full of supplies into our home one night while walking their dog. This led to wild speculation and assumptions among the tense group members. People started tagging us in the group, demanding to know why we didn't notify the country or them in advance about the apocalypse, cursing us as heartless and cruel. I rolled my eyes silently. If we had really spread the word about the apocalypse, I don't know if they would have believed us, but I do know I would probably still be locked up in a police station, seeing that we didn't respond. Some people couldn't wait and tried to morally blackmail us. They naturally demanded that we provide them with supplies. A middle-aged man from apartment 402 in building 3 said his elderly mother, over 70, had been terribly frightened recently and asked us to provide some food and medicine. His words carried the tone of a filial son who doesn't know he's the notorious ingrate of the community, leaving his mother, who suffers from Alzheimer's, unable to take care of herself while he idles away living off her pension. Now he had the nerve to emphasize his filial piety. A couple from the 6th floor of the same building sent a voice message in the group. The woman, crying, begged us to give them something, saying their 5-year-old child hadn't eaten well for days and had developed a high fever. Seeing this, my eyes rolled even harder. Their so-called baby was a hyper-masculine child. They had refused to have an abortion after finding out during a prenatal checkup. The property management in our residential area has visited his home several times to try and reason with him because of complaints. I've been indiscriminately targeted by this child before. I'm genuinely concerned this child might turn into some kind of super aggressive mutant. The most shocking was a message from a girl in apartment 101 of building 5. Her fragile and helpless demeanor was heart-wrenching, and her first words almost gave me a heart attack. While others would at least ask for some supplies, she outright asked if she could stay with us. She said her parents had perished outside on the very first day of the apocalypse, leaving her alone. She pitifully emphasized how little she ate and how she could help us with chores and housework. Living on the ground floor, she stressed how dangerous it was and pleaded for us to take her in, implying that refusing would be akin to murder. Oh, I get it, a Charlotte 2.0. I just chuckled to myself. Having dealt with a Charlotte once in my life, there was no way I was going to take in another. In our community group chat, people daily engage in emotional manipulation and moral blackmail. My mother and I treat it as a bit of entertainment and never respond. Once the internet goes down in a bit, they'll quiet down. After a few days of silence, Dylan pompously made a statement in the group chat. Why should we give our stuff to you all? A bunch of shameless freeloaders. He must have felt good saying that. But it also confirmed everyone's suspicions that we had a lot of supplies. Since then, our iron door has been quite the hotspot. The occasional sight of a few zombies roaming was somewhat reassuring. Many looking for supplies considered our home the first stop for a raid, with some lying and crying at our doorstep, others claiming to be relatives who would care for my mother in her old age, and some even trying to pry the door open with wire. However, the heavily reinforced door, costing hundreds of thousands, hasn't budged an inch no matter what tricks they tried. Suddenly, a month into the apocalypse, the internet finally went down as I remembered from last time. Following this was the increasingly colder weather in August. On the surveillance, we watched Grace's apartment turn into a battlefield for survival once they realized this disaster wasn't just a simple flu virus. Grace, taking on the role of the protagonist, believed that since Elijah and his son were living in her apartment, she had the right to control the supplies. Conveniently forgetting she was once Elijah's mistress, a few days later, unable to satiate their hunger, Elijah and Dylan physically confronted Grace and her daughter. The significant disparity in strength drastically altered the dynamics between them. Initially, Dylan had only hoarded some supplies in Grace's small apartment, hardly enough for long, just 2 days before the internet was cut off. My mother and I watched Elijah and Dylan plotting to return and usurp this 90-square-meter apartment. They even planned to bring Charlotte along. I wondered why Dylan had stopped messaging after that one time. It really wasn't safe to go out at the beginning of the apocalypse, but later there were many chances. Besides not wanting to leave their scant supplies, it turns out Charlotte was another reason. In the apocalyptic world, survival knows no morals, just like Charlotte, who, after learning we had hoarded a substantial amount of supplies, offered herself to Dylan in betrayal. Grace, who had previously favored her with supplies, now found herself isolated in the small apartment. In the apocalypse, if unity isn't achieved, sacrifices are inevitable. In my past life, it was my mother and me. This time, it's Grace. Once Elijah fully realized the apocalypse had arrived, Grace, who had provided him emotional comfort, became useless to him. He needed supplies to fill his stomach and a shelter to protect him from the zombies. Elijah and Dylan naturally assumed we would gladly welcome them back. After all, we were just 2 weak women, and they were men. How about avocado scrambled egg toast with walnut black sesame paste, or a purple sweet potato and yum cake paired with black sticky rice milk porridge? She yawned. I think the snail noodle soup you recommended last time was pretty tasty too. Oh. And before the male lead in the cold and charming young master's 20 babies met the female lead, he was involved in so many scandals. Was he really a virgin? Me. I weakly pointed towards the front door. Mom, Elijah and the others are here, making a racket outside. Mom paused, tightened her coat, and her demeanor suddenly became fierce and sharp. They sure came eagerly. It's just the right time to test the skills I've honed from reading dozens of exhilarating face-slapping stories lately. With that, she walked into the kitchen to make breakfast. Phew, I thought she was going in to grab a kitchen knife. What could be more infuriating than enjoying a hearty, warm breakfast comfortably in front of someone who is hungry, cold, and constantly on the lookout for zombies? If it makes them so mad that they can't help but curse while drooling, that would be pretty mean. Eventually, when Elijah and the others could hardly shout anymore, Mom and I mercifully opened the armored door. Before opening it, we checked through the peephole to ensure the first iron door was intact. There was a 2-meter gap between the two doors. I set up a small coffee table and 2 stools in the hallway. We casually laid out a variety of freshly cooked food from the kitchen, steaming and fragrant, its gentle heat wafting through the air. Lily, hurry up and open this door. Your brother and I are almost freezing to death outside. We've been calling for ages and no one answered. Are you deaf? Where's your mom? Shush. I put my finger to my lips to silence him, sporting a smug look even prouder than that of a silenced Juan. Stop making noise, or I'll just go in and eat breakfast myself. Our house is well insulated and heated. I might not hear your shouts once I start watching TV and flipping through comics. The temperature had plummeted drastically over the past few days, affecting the normally active zombies. They became fewer and slower. Otherwise, their voices could have attracted a horde of zombies in minutes. Sis, I know you hate me, and I shouldn't have come, but Uncle and Dylan have been out here freezing for a long time. They're bound to be upset, so please let them in. Charlotte timidly stepped out from behind Elijah, her eyes either red from the cold or from feeling wronged. Looking as if she wanted the whole world to feel guilty, her words were self-sacrificing. Seemingly considerate of Elijah, but actually full of cunning. If I let Elijah and the others in, would Mom and I still control the situation? Did they really think everyone is a fool? Hilarious, truly hilarious. At Charlotte's words, Elijah got angry. Damn girl, open the door and wait until I get in there. I'll teach you a lesson. Okay, you can try to hit me, but can you even get in? He still didn't grasp the situation. His chauvinism unaltered by the apocalypse, a stubborn relic of millennia. I bit into a freshly fried crispy spring roll right in front of him, the aroma so enticing I could hear Charlotte's audible gulp. They both swallowed their saliva too, looking thin and beggarly. Where's your mom? Call her over. Seeing that they couldn't handle me, they pinned their hopes on my mom. Before the words were out, Mom came over with a pot of snail noodle soup. Dylan and the others were like dogs in a cage, barking madly for food. Ella, hurry up and open the door. Is there anything else to eat? I'm starving. Mom, let me in. I've messaged you. I've seen through that mother and daughter's true colors. I'm on your side. Why did you prepare so much food for this dead girl? We need to be careful with our supplies at home. Can't just waste them. Come on, hurry up. If we dawdle any longer and a horde of zombies shows up, it'll be too late. My mom just glanced at them, slumping into another stool. She showed no intention of moving forward even 2 steps and even slurped up some rice noodles. The taste of these snail noodles is simply overpowering. People outside the iron door lived as desperate as famished, homeless dogs. Ella, what do you mean? Elijah, regaining his composure and breathing heavily, questioned. Mom calmly put down her chopsticks, seemingly unaffected by the apocalyptic world around her, appearing even more self-contained and mild than before. But her words were venomous. I was afraid she might poison herself just by licking her lips. What else could it mean? Just bored, watching a few stray dogs grovel with my only daughter. Elijah's face turned as purple as a piece of liver. Dylan suddenly burst into tears. Charlotte knelt on the ground, pleading with us. Auntie, I know my mom ruined your marriage, but Uncle has seen her true colors now. He knows he was wrong. My mom will get what she deserves. We've already left her and took all the supplies from our home. At this time, it's not safe for you and your daughter to guard all these supplies alone. Uncle and Dylan are men after all. Only if we unite can we securely survive this dark period. I turned to look back at the living room of our house. I wondered how Charlotte was so sure we had so much supply. She must have seen the stuff leaking out of the living room. Well, it wasn't in vain that I calculated the angle of the door opening so meticulously, but the supplies they brought over, it took me a while to guess, not very certainly, that it was the mini bag Dylan was carrying. Slap, a slap landed on Charlotte's face. Grace, disheveled and stained with black blood on her clothes, rushed up. She shook her finger at Charlotte, her tone desperate. I'm your mother. In my heart, I agreed. Watching the surveillance, Grace had indeed been protecting Charlotte. helping her compete for supplies among the two men, Dylan and another. But a crooked beam shouldn't expect the crossbeam to be straight. After saying this, Grace lunged at Elijah, scratching and clawing, not even worried that her loud screams might attract zombies. She was already discarded, broken beyond repair. Elijah, annoyed beyond endurance, knocked Grace to the ground with his elbow and turned to kneel at the door. In this apocalyptic world, the disparity between men and women is so cruel. Mom and I watched this belated drama unfold through an iron door, anticipating what nonsensical pleas Elijah would make next. After all, we've heard all sorts of nonsense recently, and if Elijah's next words don't carry some sincerity, it would really be a disservice to us braving the cold to have breakfast outside. Honey, I was wrong. Please forgive me, he cried as he slapped himself. I shouldn't have been unfaithful. I was bewitched before, as the saying goes. A couple for a day is attached for 100 days, considering the years we've spent together, and having Lily and Dylan. Please forgive me, a child needs a complete home. At this time, it's not safe for you and your daughter to guard all these things, my son, and I can protect you. I swear I'll never be dazzled by the tempting world again. I'll be loyal to you for life. I'll love and respect you. Tell me to go east, and I won't go west. I felt my ears should be enjoying tales of legends over a pot of murky wine, not listening to these disgusting words. Does Elijah still think he's a prize to be fought over? He couldn't possibly think that Grace was with him for his personality, could he? And surely he doesn't think that my mom was heartbroken over his infidelity, right? Now that the apocalypse has come, his little company is as good as trash. His deep vows even less valuable than the crumbs of the spring roll I just dropped, indeed. Men plead when they err, they even kneel, slap themselves, but you must not be soft-hearted. They repeat their vows over and over. Men love their vows, as meaningless as the barking of a dog. You must not believe them, mister. You what tells no lies. I heard my mother snort sarcastically, talking about a couple for a day, attached for 100 days. I think a couple only when together. Birds flying apart when disaster strikes is more fitting. When you were with Grace in her apartment, turning the heavens upside down, you certainly didn't remember we were husband and wife. When you called me an ugly hag and planned with her to strip me of everything, you didn't remember then either. Now that your life is at stake, you remember the kindness of a day's couplehood. These words left Elijah speechless. Mom looked at him with disdain, her tone equally scornful. Do you really think I'm just a simple housewife confined to the kitchen, cooking 3 meals a day? Don't forget. You were just a poor boy who got where you are today because of my family's support. Lily, do you know what this is called? I immediately responded, a phoenix man. If it weren't for the apocalypse, the evidence I have would be enough to leave you with nothing. This exchange turned Elijah's face deathly pale. Dylan, following their lead, knelt down earnestly. Mom, I'm your son. You wouldn't just watch me die, right? I was too immature before. That's why I chose to side with Dad. Everything I said was out of anger, you know that. I regretted it that night and even sent you a message. If it weren't for our past lives, we might have been moved by Dylan's words. Dylan thought so too. He even suspected that it was because Elijah and others were here that Mom and Sister didn't feel it was convenient to open the door for him. Multiple pairs of eyes stared at us, my mother and me, their eyes filled with a desperate thirst for survival and an undisguised greed. Call me a saint, but letting all 4 of you in is not practical. We don't have enough supplies. I'll only give one of you a spot. You guys decide who it will be. I was shocked by this. I looked into my mother's eyes and unconsciously let my guard down. Outside the iron gate, there was sudden silence for a minute. Human nature began to show itself again. Among Elijah and Dylan, father and son, and between Grace and Charlotte, mother and daughter, but not between Elijah and Grace. Their relationship, already frail and wrapped in money and beauty, didn't need humaneness to sustain it at this moment. Dad, you're old, and you won't live as long as I will. Give me this chance. Aren't you the one who said I was your only son and everything would be mine in the future? If I die outside from the cold or get bitten, our family line will end. Dylan naturally demanded. Dylan chuckled with his head lowered. What kind of son wishes for his father's death? Dylan, I've treated you well enough before. I've spent money to solve every trouble you've caused outside. Now it's your turn to repay me. After saying that, Elijah suddenly pulled out a dagger from his pocket and stabbed at Dylan, who reacted, and the two struggled together. It seemed Elijah wanted to be the only choice by elimination. When pushed to the brink, people can lose their reason, just as they were now, not even considering the truthfulness of my mother's promise. Blinded by hatred for each other, they thought that by killing the other and proving their strength, they could enter through the iron gate and not worry about survival in this apocalyptic world. Charlotte had already curled up in a corner, scared by the slap, quickly realizing that she would definitely not be the one to go in. She waited numbly and hopelessly for death. Grace looked at the scene and started laughing and crying like a madwoman. She walked heavily towards the iron gate, each step laden with weight. At the last step, she collapsed, her hands joined in prayer, her once proud and clever head bowed. "I'm sorry, Ella. I was wrong. I shouldn't have broken up your family. I've received my retribution." Her pupils dilated, shaking her head and gesturing at us. "But Elijah and the others really can't be let in. Men like him are like dogs. They can't change their habits. If they betrayed you once, their nature is just bad. If you're soft-hearted, you'll be betrayed countless times." She burst into tears again, her hands continuously praying. "So please, please," I thought she was begging us to let her in, to secure a chance for her own survival. But then, "Please let my daughter live." I saw in my mom's gaze, beyond the hatred, a hint of pity. She just wasn't raised right by me. Her nature isn't bad. If she annoys you, you can beat her, scold her, you too can control her, but if you let Elijah and them," Grace cried out in pain as Elijah kicked her away. "Damn wretch, if it weren't for you seducing me, would I have betrayed my family? Wife, you have to believe me, we've been together so many years, are you going to believe a stranger over me?" Before Elijah could continue, Dylan rose from the ground, his face marked by knife wounds. Elijah, who had worked in the fields in the countryside, had a decisive advantage over Dylan, who had grown up pampered in the city, but Elijah was older, less enduring, so the two were inseparably entangled. The breakfast that had been served was now cold, and my mother and I had no desire to continue watching this drama. We were about to get up and go back when the scene had suddenly changed. In the midst of Charlotte's screams, Grace, who had been kicked to the ground, stood up in an extremely distorted and abnormal posture. The creaking of her bones was grating. Grace had turned into a zombie. I suddenly remembered her clothes stained with black blood. She had likely been attacked by zombies on her way here but had narrowly escaped. Dylan cursed and quickly got up, frantically banging on the metal door. His legs, already weakened from the recent fight, were shaking like a sieve. "Mom, let me in quickly, quick," Elijah snorted with laughter, disdainfully saying, "It's just a female zombie. We've killed plenty on our way here." But then he paused. Everyone remembered that when Grace had rushed over, besides slapping Charlotte, she had also bitten and scratched at Elijah. At first, it was thought to be just Grace venting her anger for being abandoned by them, but now it seemed there might be another reason, like her knowing she was about to turn and intentionally trying to infect Elijah. Elijah was scared. Scared enough to wet his pants. Just thinking that he might turn into a zombie made him bang on the metal door as frantically as Dylan. At that moment, Grace, now fully transformed into a zombie, let out a low roar to the sky. Those who had survived the apocalypse long enough knew this was a call to nearby zombies. Charlotte, who had been quietly sitting in a corner, tried to take advantage of the chaos to escape quickly, but Chloe grabbed her arm and started biting. Such a strong smell of blood would definitely attract many zombies. "Lily, get inside quick," I nodded, speeding up with my mom to clear the breakfast off the table. Even in the apocalypse, we couldn't afford to waste. Seeing that we had no intention of opening the door, the two outside were dumbfounded, alternating between pleading and cursing, but who cared about them? We were just there to watch the show. The armored door closed, seemingly cutting us off from the world outside. I could only faintly hear the terrifying noises from outside. Leaning close to the door, "Lily, don't look," my mom stopped me. "From the sounds of it, they won't escape easily. The apocalypse will end someday, and we will return to a normal world. Mom hopes that when that time comes, you won't carry the shadows of the apocalypse with you." I pulled back my curiosity and hugged her tightly. I also believed the apocalypse would eventually end, and my mom and I would step into that new world together, and the end was upon us, and a small courier station became the stronghold where my colleagues and I clung to life. Stuck up, no need, for we had endless parcels to unpack, down jackets, gas stoves, cooking oil, rice. Every package was a blind box full of surprises. We collected drinking water, fended off zombies, and drove away invaders. In this apocalypse, we secured our fortress and lived comfortably with ample food. Unexpectedly, the greatest danger turned out to be the unpredictability of human nature. 01, another year, another Singles Day, when our logistics station would be overwhelmed with packages. At 8 in the morning, just after sorting a batch of deliveries, a few colleagues left on electric tricycles to distribute them. Before I could even take a sip of water, another logistics truck pulled up. The driver, Harrison, got out, cursing, "Is there no end to this? I've barely slept 5 hours in the last 2 days." I picked up my cup and said, "Go upstairs and rest for a bit. The others just left for deliveries and won't be back anytime soon. We can unload the truck later." Harrison glanced at the heaps of packages on the ground and replied, "All right, Isaac, you tidy up here. I'll go up for a nap." He then climbed to the second floor, originally, to save costs. The company rented the first floor of this warehouse for the courier station. It had 2 levels for easy loading and unloading, and instead of stairs, there was a 2-meter lift in the northwest corner of the room. The lift aligned perfectly with the first floor ceiling when raised. The second floor was still unrented, and considering our recent overtime, we bought 2 second-hand mattresses for anyone who didn't want to go home after work to crash for the night while resting. I scrolled through my phone, mostly seeing live streaming sales. Moving to the next video, an eye-catching title appeared. Local hospital received more than 10 rabies patients today. The video seemed to be secretly filmed in a hospital, showing patients with pale faces tied to stretchers, struggling violently, veins bulging on their necks. Before I could finish watching, the video was suddenly removed for violating regulations. Was there some secret that couldn't be exposed? I put down my phone, rubbing my eyes. Best not to overthink things, especially with today's workload still uncertain. I picked up an empty bucket to refill at the nearby water station. Just as I stepped out, I noticed a man walking strangely in the distance, his head almost touching his chest, legs stiffly moving forward, arms hanging limply. I turned and entered the water station, asking the owner, who was sitting at the desk, "Hey, Jacob, what's up with that guy outside?" Jacob didn't respond. His fingers nervously picking at the desk. I nudged his shoulder. "Jacob, I'm talking to you. Why are you picking at the desk?" Slowly, Jacob lifted his head, his face pale, dark veins prominent on his neck, his eyes white, terrified. I stepped back and ran. As Jacob suddenly stood up, I heard the sound of a chair falling behind me. Glancing back, he was already rounding the desk, chasing after me. I threw the empty bucket behind me, hitting his head and causing it to tilt, but he seemed unfazed. Not slowing down at all, I ran out, slamming the glass double doors behind me as Jacob reached them, clawing at the glass, pressing forward. Just then, screams echoed from down the street. The strangely walking man I had seen earlier was now pinning down an old man, biting his neck as bystanders fled in panic. Zombies, the word flashed through my mind. Without a moment to spare, I quickly grabbed the mop at the door, propped its handle against the doorknob, and dashed toward the courier station. Upon entering and closing the glass door behind me, I saw the elderly man who had just been bitten staggering to his feet and walking forward. I turned around and shouted, "Harrison, get up, there's trouble." Harrison, probably exhausted, took several calls before he finally came downstairs, rubbing his sleepy eyes. In the meantime, I observed through the glass door that the old man and another guy had bitten 4 or 5 more people, all showing the same symptoms. Could it really be zombies? "Isaac, what are you looking at?" Harrison asked as he followed my gaze outside. "Wow, are they shooting a movie, a zombie film?" "Shooting my foot," I retorted, slapping the back of his head. "It's real." Jacob looked incredulous. "Bro, don't scare me. Isn't that causing chaos outside?" His words reminded me to quickly phone our colleagues who were out delivering packages, instructing them not to deliver anymore and to head home immediately. 2 of them reported seeing the same chaotic scenes on the streets. After hanging up, I looked at the distance and said to Harrison, "Quick, while there are fewer people around, bring the truck over to block the door, otherwise, this door won't keep the zombies out." Harrison drove a box truck, over 5 meters long, with a side door for easy unloading. I instructed him, "Park it as close to the door as possible. The smaller the gap, the better, with the side door facing the entrance." "Got it, Isaac, I can handle it." Harrison expertly parked the truck, nearly flush against the glass door. I opened the door and said, "Harrison, quickly get out from the right side of the cab, then crawl in from under the truck." Once Harrison crawled in, I immediately pulled down the rolling door and closed the glass door again. After finishing, I slumped into a chair. Noticing for the first time that my palms were sweaty from tension, I took out my phone, and it was flooded with news about zombie bites, not just domestically, but abroad as well. I hurriedly called my parents who lived up in the mountains and advised them to stock up on food and lock their doors. Their area, sparsely populated and with several acres of orchard they managed, had no reports of such incidents yet. "Son, do you have enough to eat there? We have lots of radishes and cabbages in our cellar, and about 500 or 600 pounds of wheat, so we're not worried about food, but can you manage without much to eat up there?" Looking around at the room full of parcels, I replied, "Mom, don't worry, I have plenty here. Remember, there's a cave on the back mountain. The entrance is small but it's big inside. If things get dangerous, take the food and hide there, and remember, never open the door for anyone, things might get chaotic." Hearing my parents agree, I hung up feeling somewhat relieved. "Harrison, aren't you going to call your family?" I asked. "I don't really have any family left. My parents divorced and lost touch when I was young, and my grandmother who raised me passed away last year, so I'm all alone." I patted his shoulder. "Let's just stay here for now, brother. We can't go outside for a while anyway. The courier station used to be a warehouse, and to prevent leaking issues, The landlord only left 2 small windows, half a meter wide, near the roof on the second floor, which were usually closed. The first floor had no windows. After we pulled down the roller shutter, the only source of light in the room was from our lamps. Taking a short rest, I said to Harrison, "We don't know what's happening outside right now, and we can't just sit here and wait. Let's start by unloading the goods from the truck. If things get out of control outside, these supplies might be crucial for our survival." "All right, Isaac, I'll follow your lead," Harrison replied. He was still shaken, but his actions were decisive. I rolled up the shutter again, opened the side door of the truck, jumped in, and together with Harrison, we unloaded all the packages. By the time we finished, it was noon. I checked my phone again and saw an official announcement advising everyone to stock up on supplies and stay indoors. The government was making efforts to control the outbreak and isolate the infected. Feeling a bit more relaxed, I began to think about our survival strategy. The only entrance was now blocked, ensuring our temporary safety. It seemed unlikely that the zombies could move the truck blocking the entrance. It was uncertain when the chaos outside would be controlled, and considering how fast the virus was spreading, the outlook wasn't good. We had to prepare for the long term. Just then, a growling sound broke the silence. Harrison, touching his stomach, sheepishly said, "Got anything to eat? I haven't eaten since morning and I'm really hungry now." I got up, went behind the desk, and pulled out 2 packs of instant noodles from the cabinet, tossing them to Harrison. "That's all we have." Harrison started eating immediately. While he was eating, I searched through the cabinet and gathered all the food we had. Half a box of instant noodles, a pack of bottled water, and 6 apples. "This is all the food we have. 2 packs of noodles and 2 apples a day should last us 3 days. Harrison nodded. "Isaac, do you think things will be under control in 3 days? "It's hard to say. We have to prepare for the worst. If the situation wasn't under control in 3 days, it could become much worse. For safety, let's stay on the second floor from now on and bring all the food up." After packing up, we placed everything on the lift. There was an electric switch for the lift on both floors, and to prevent being trapped upstairs during a power outage, there was also a manual control on the second floor. Harrison stepped onto the platform, and after I closed the switch, I quickly jumped on. The platform slowly ascended, sealing off the only access to the second floor. On the second day, we moved everything from the first floor to the second. By the third day, every door was tightly shut, not a soul was in sight on the streets, and the number of roaming zombies had increased significantly. Internet connectivity was intermittent, mostly showing news of zombie outbreaks from different places. Some were even calling it an apocalyptic carnival, trying to gain viewers by planning to fight the zombies. The authorities continued to urge everyone to lock their doors and windows and stay inside while they deployed armed forces to prioritize control of densely populated areas like hospitals and shopping malls. All I could do was watch the situation from the window every day. That evening, after finishing the last pack of noodles, I told Harrison, "From now on, we'll have to find food from these packages." Rubbing his hands together, Harrison's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Is it finally our turn to open the packages?" The next morning, Harrison and I picked out a few cardboard box packages. Opening the first, we found a pair of women's leather boots. Harrison shook his head in disappointment, repacked the boots, and placed them in the corner. "Let's open this one," I suggested, feeling the weight of another box, hoping it contained something useful. Harrison came over, knife in hand, and quickly opened the box. Inside were 3 vacuum-sealed bags of rice. "Hey, rice. The rice is good, but how do we cook it without a pot?" Harrison didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this predicament. I placed the rice on the ground nearby and suggested, "Let's just keep it for now. We might find a pot eventually." Then I tore off the delivery note and wrote, 3 bags of 5 kilograms rice. Seeing Harrison's puzzled look, I patted him on the shoulder and explained, "If we manage to get the situation under control one day, we'll need to deliver these items to our customers. We're just borrowing them for now, and we should keep track for eventual compensation." Harrison nodded in agreement. We both hoped for that day to come, even if it meant facing compensation. Despite the slim hope, we clung to the anticipation of returning to our normal, busy lives rather than being stuck here, where our biggest daily concern was securing 3 meals a day. The third package, which was also heavy, was eagerly opened by Harrison, who brightened up at the sight. More than a dozen bottles of Coke. "Isaac, catch." I grabbed the Coke he tossed to me and took several gulps. The long mist flavor instantly sweetened my insides. "That's so refreshing," Harrison said with a wide grin after chugging it down. "Isaac, you gotta admit, this is quite thrilling, like opening mystery boxes." I smiled noncommittally. It was the most relaxed we'd felt since the zombie outbreak began. In the following boxes, we found a set of knives, a tent, a box of tissues, a box of bread, a box of oranges, and a blanket. After recording everything, we each ate a piece of bread for breakfast. The temperature had dropped sharply these past few days. and we urgently needed warm clothing. Harrison fetched a few large parcel bags, picking one up and guessing, I bet this one has a down jacket. Sure enough, it was a lady's down jacket. I placed it next to a pair of boots, hoping one day its owner might claim it. As Harrison hesitated over which package to open next, I started examining the labels on the bags. Most had just 2 lines for the address, but a few noted the item model. I picked up one marked with black XXL and opened it to find a black down jacket. Harrison, try this on, I offered, handing it to him. Harrison put it on and exclaimed with joy, Isaac, it fits perfectly. I smiled knowingly and continued searching. Since we now targeted the parcels marked with specific colors and sizes, the ones we opened next all contained men's clothing, 2 sets of thermal underwear, a sweater, a fleece-lined pajama set, and a wool blanket. Dressed in thermal underwear and covered with the fleece-lined pajamas, I felt warm enough even without the down jacket. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in a while. It's been a week since the first zombie outbreak, and the situation is still dire. As evening approached, I finally got through to my parents' phone, learning that zombies had also appeared in the village and that they had moved to a cave on the mountain eased my worries. The cave was above the orchard they managed, which also had a vegetable cellar and a well. Although the living conditions were harsh, they were relatively safe and had the essentials for basic living. As night fell, I climbed the ladder at the window again to observe the outside. The few streetlights flickered dimly, and the streets remained empty, no sign of zombies or humans. Could it be that zombie activity decreases at night? I quickly browsed the news on my phone, looking for information on zombie habits. A highly upvoted comment caught my eye. Zombies have almost no vision, relying mainly on sound and smell to navigate. Their movements are sluggish at night, and only a shot to the head can kill them. There are too many zombies, the situation is difficult to control, and there will definitely be interruptions to internet, water, and electricity services. In these apocalyptic times, self-resilience is the only way forward. Reflecting on the recent events, I believe the credibility of this comment is high. Regardless, securing essential supplies for survival is of utmost importance. Harrison and I, after some analysis, came up with a preliminary plan. First, we gathered all the new courier bags reserved for mailing services at the station and filled them with water for daily use. Secondly, we considered transporting the large water barrels from the neighboring water station. Otherwise, once the water supply was cut off, it would be difficult to obtain drinking water. I handed Harrison some tape, saying, after we fill the courier bags with water, let's seal them with this tape to fit a bit more in. In one day, we managed to fill over 100 bags with water, temporarily solving our water needs. The next issue was the drinking water. There were probably over 100 barrels at the neighboring station, and figuring out how to transport them without alerting the zombies was a challenge. I discussed with Harrison, since we need to transport water, we can't have the truck blocked at the entrance. I think we should drive it to the water station's door, load the water, and then drive back to our door to unload slowly. Harrison slapped his thigh in agreement. Great idea. But should we arm ourselves just in case? What if zombies attack and we can't escape in time? Indeed, we needed to prepare for self-defense. Harrison picked up some glass wine bottles from a corner and asked, Isaac, are these any good? Our colleague, Mr. Chin, had been working overtime and sleeping at the courier station, drinking several bottles each night and accumulating quite a few empty bottles. Perhaps we could use them for something. As I picked up a bottle, an idea struck me. I remembered the edible oil barrels we unloaded last night, which were only wrapped in plastic film without cardboard boxes, leaving a lasting impression. I found a barrel of oil, tore off the delivery note and packaging film, poured half a bottle of oil into a wine bottle, and twisted the packaging film into a wick, leaving about 10 centimeters sticking out of the bottle. Thus, a Molotov cocktail was ready. After making 3 Molotov cocktails, I took a lighter from the drawer and explained to Harrison, if you see zombies approaching from afar, light this and throw it. If zombies fear fire, they should keep their distance for a while. Even if they don't, it could distract them for a few minutes. Harrison was impressed, giving me a thumbs up. Isaac, you really know your stuff. I smiled, picked up the delivery note from the ground, wrote down 6 liters of edible oil in 1 barrel, and placed it back in the drawer. For extra precaution, Harrison fetched a mop handle and tied a fruit knife from the courier supplies to it, preparing our equipment and waiting for nightfall. At 11 at night, I looked out the window. There were almost no zombies wandering the streets. I put on my company-issued parka, zipped it up to the top, and secured the buttons. The parka was double-layered for warmth and made of sturdy fabric. Wearing a hat protected my neck and head. offering some defense against possible zombie attacks. Armed with the beer bottles and mop handle, I opened the rolling door. Harrison crawled out from under the truck, entered the driver's cabin, and I jumped into the cargo area. Harrison expertly started the truck, reversed, and then stopped at the water station entrance. We didn't rush to get out. I took out a flashlight and scanned the inside carefully, seeing no danger. I signaled Harrison. He climbed onto the roof of the cabin where he kept watch while I handled the transportation. I was pulling the small cart at the entrance, carefully making my way inside. The cart could hold up to 6 water jugs, and after 7 or 8 trips back and forth, I was gasping for air from exhaustion. Harrison jumped down from the roof to take over my duties while I climbed back up to keep watch. The dimly lit street was eerily quiet at that moment. With no sign of the zombies that roamed during the day, I didn't dare let my guard down for even a second. Suddenly, a shadow shot out from behind a tree with a whoosh, making my heart skip a beat as I gripped the beer bottle in my hand. The shadow ran beneath the street lamp, and I could see it was just a cat. "Phew, you scared me," I muttered, patting my chest, just as I was about to sit down. Rustling sounds came from behind the tree, followed by heavy footsteps. A zombie, moving oddly but faster than any I had seen before, staggered towards us. "Not good, get to the truck," I yelled to Harrison. Harrison was transferring water from the cart to the truck, hearing my shout but reluctant to abandon the water now within reach. He sped up. "Isaac, hold it off, I'm almost done." 20 meters, 15 meters, 10 meters, the zombie was closing in. I quickly took out a lighter and lit the plastic string at the mouth of the bottle, swinging my arm to hurl the bottle. With a loud bang, it exploded at the zombie's feet, the cooking oil inside igniting instantly. The flames temporarily halted the zombie's advance as it hesitated to move forward, but I knew that once the fire died down, the zombie would swiftly charge. "Isaac, we need to go," Harrison shouted as he closed the van's side door. To keep the zombie at bay, I threw 2 more ignited beer bottles before jumping off the truck. Harrison was already in the driver's seat, starting the engine. While I quickly ran back to the depot, we parked and turned off the ignition, with only a 10-centimeter gap between the van's side and the shop door, and the van's front too close to the wall to open the driver's door. Harrison jumped out of the passenger side, quickly crawled under the vehicle, and prepared to enter from beneath. Bang, bang, the zombie had followed, mimicking Harrison's actions and crawling under the vehicle. Realizing the danger, I grabbed a broom handle, leaned down, and jabbed at the zombie's head. Unaffected by the pain, it kept crawling forward. I had no choice but to use the handle to pin its shoulder, stopping it from moving. Fortunately, Harrison was quick and agile, soon crawling out from under the vehicle to the safety of the shop. "Quick, drag that cabinet over to block under the vehicle," I called out. Harrison immediately dragged over a cabinet, and together, we shoved it under the vehicle and quickly rolled down the shutter door. Outside, the zombie continued to pound against the cabinet as Harrison and I, drenched in sweat, sat on the ground, our backs soaked. We sat without daring to move, listening intently as the pounding sounds gradually diminished. Only when we could no longer hear anything did we cautiously move up to the 2nd floor. I climbed the ladder and looked down. The zombie was gone, leaving behind only a long trail of blood, likely from its head. 06, a night without dreams. As dawn broke, the banging sound started again downstairs. Harrison and I looked at each other and instantly woke up. Without even bothering to put on shoes, I climbed up to the window to check. Several zombies were wandering around the bloodstain below, intermittently trying to crawl under the vehicle. Remembering comments I had read about zombies being sensitive to smells, they were probably attracted by the scent of blood. "Isaac, what's the situation outside?" As I put on my shoes, I replied, "There are a few zombies outside, probably attracted by the smell of blood. We need to clean up the bloodstains from yesterday." "How do we clean it? Do we have to go outside?" Harrison was still shaken from last night's events. I picked up some water bags and said, "No need, we can try washing it off under the car with water." Harrison sighed in relief, grabbed the water, and followed me to the 1st floor. I pulled the shutter door up to waist height. The zombies outside, hearing the noise, banged against the truck more fiercely. I was immensely grateful that we had used the truck to block the door, otherwise the zombies would have broken in by now. While my mind was racing, my hands didn't stop working. We opened the water-filled courier bags and forcefully flushed them under the truck through the gaps in the cabinets. Bag after bag of water went down, and gradually the banging from outside lessened. I pulled down the shutter door and ran up to the 2nd floor window to look down, and sure enough, most of the zombies had left. After a brief rest and breakfast, we continued to search for usable deliveries. Harrison sighed looking at the 3 bags of rice by the wall. It said a skilled cook can't work without rice, but here we are, skilled cooks without fire. Fire, Harrison's words reminded me. I remembered seeing a package labeled solid alcohol yesterday. After some searching, We found the package indeed contained blocks of solid alcohol and a small alcohol stove, probably purchased for an outdoor picnic. The courier station had a stainless steel basin usually used for washing fruits. I picked one of appropriate size, washed the rice, and poured it into the basin, then lit the alcohol blocks in the stove. The golden flames danced, lighting up the dim room and our spirits. Half an hour later, the smell of cooked rice filled the air. It was our first attempt. So the bottom of the basin was scorched, but that didn't dampen our spirits to eat. Harrison found a bottle of chili sauce, scooped a big spoonful onto the rice, and we had our first hot meal in days. We ate until we were stuffed, leaving not a single grain of rice. After eating, Harrison suggested we open a few more packages. After all, we couldn't eat chili sauce with rice every day. Our taste buds might handle it, but our stomachs wouldn't. I teased him, "You rascal. Weren't you just dying for some rice?" Harrison scratched his head and chuckled. "Now that we've solved our basic needs, I'm thinking about improving our quality of life. You look for more, I'll go wash the dishes," I said, standing up and heading to the bathroom with the dishes. The second floor had a simple bathroom. Just as I finished washing up and was about to leave, Harrison called out, "Isaac, come quick, look what I found." I put down the dishes and ran over. Harrison had laid out the finds on the floor: 3 pieces of cured meat and several bundles of dried vegetables, dried green beans and radish strips. The meat was a mix of fat and lean, each piece weighing about 2 or 3 pounds. Having not tasted meat and vegetables for many days, I swallowed involuntarily. Harrison excitedly held up a piece of the cured meat like a prized treasure. "Tonight, we feast." I took the cured meat and said, "Great. Tonight I'll make you cured meat with dried vegetables and steamed rice." After tidying up, I tore off the courier label from the box, which had an address from a mountain village, likely sent by family who made it themselves. Having received many dried vegetables from my parents around this time in previous years, I was familiar with these. Though small in quantity, once soaked and expanded, they could make a large dish, stir-fried with the cured meat for a savory and satisfying meal. In the afternoon, taking advantage of the remaining daylight, I diced the soaked radish strips and sliced the cured meat, layering them over the rice to steam together in the pot. With previous experience, the rice was steamed much better this time. Rice enriched with the fat from cured meat and paired with chewy diced radish was so delicious that it felt like our tongues might just swallow themselves. We ate to our heart's content, momentarily forgetting the hardships of the apocalypse. A month flew by, and utilities like water, electricity, and the internet had long been shut off. Over the past week, more people started venturing out in search of food. As most households' food supplies hardly lasted over 20 days, the number of zombies on the streets visibly increased, even forming small hordes. Clearly, the risk of getting infected outside was still significant. We had only opened less than a third of the packages, which later revealed flour, spices, snacks, clothes, toys, a telescope, climbing rope, a military shovel, camping gas stoves, and disinfectant alcohol among others. Thankfully, a popular camping video had spiked sales of outdoor gear, which was exactly what we needed. Harrison and I made a stack of pancakes with the flour, which were convenient to heat and eat. Considering that cooking rice consumed more fuel, we reduced the frequency of our rice meals. Our supply of dried vegetables was almost depleted, but fortunately, we found a bag of soybeans and some garlic in the parcels. I constructed a row of makeshift planting boxes from large cardboard boxes, lined them with plastic film, added a little water, and planted the soybeans and garlic, covering the surface with cling film and poking some air holes. I placed them in a well-lit area. The soybean sprouts and garlic shoots grew vigorously, becoming our main source of vegetables. Adhering to the principle of never going outside, we were holed up in a small courier station surrounded by thousands of parcels, living a self-sufficient life. Survival in the apocalypse was all about enduring. During our spare time, Harrison and I took turns keeping watch through the window. With the telescope, we could see further, helping us pass time and monitor the zombies' behavior. One day, while we were organizing our supplies, a sudden sound of a car door closing came from downstairs. I immediately climbed up to the window to see what was happening. A SUV pulled up at the door, and 3 men wielding machetes lingered outside. After a brief discussion, a tall man opened the trunk of the SUV and took out a tow rope, attaching it to a truck. This was bad. They were trying to break in. They dragged out the cabinets under the truck and tossed them aside. The tall man then slowly moved the truck. Soon after, they broke through the roller door and entered the first floor. I explained the situation to Harrison. We couldn't act rashly as we were no match for the 3 men. Fortunately, the lift platform had been sealed off, blocking the entrance to the second floor. They would need explosive weapons to reach us. We lay on the platform, listening intently to the sounds below. "It seems like they've cleared this place out," one of them said. Keep looking. I refuse to believe that such a big courier station has nothing left. Another insisted. There's water on the roof. Suddenly one of them shouted, followed by a rush of footsteps as they approached the platform. This was bad. I thought to myself, I had accidentally broken a bottle of vodka while sorting the supplies and hadn't had the chance to clean it up. The liquor was now seeping through the gaps in the platform. Look, they're hiding up here, a menacing voice shouted. If you're smart, come down now and hand over the food, or we'll set this place on fire. Harrison anxiously asked me, Isaac, what should we do? Given the men's demeanor, they were capable of murder and arson. We couldn't just sit and wait for death. If a fire started, we'd have no escape. My mind raced as sweat dripped down my forehead. I stood up and grabbed a courier bag filled with water. You can stay here for now. But for everyone's safety, you'll need to undergo a period of quarantine first. This is to ensure that you haven't been infected. Untying the tape wrapped around the bag, I sliced my palm with a knife, letting the fresh red blood flow into the bag, creating a vivid bloom in the water. What are you doing, Isaac? Harrison asked, gripping my hand. We're going to throw the bag onto the roof of the SUV downstairs to attract the zombies with the blood. Realization dawned on Harrison, and he grabbed another bag of water, mimicking my actions by cutting his palm and dripping blood into it. Fatso, go get the gasoline, barked a harsh voice impatiently. There was no time to waste. I picked up the bag, climbed to the window, and aimed it at the SUV below. Thump, thump, one bag of blood water splashed on Fatso, who had gone to retrieve the gasoline, and another on the SUV's roof. Shots of cursing came from below. Without a second thought, I grabbed the bottle of alcohol Harrison handed me and threw it out as well. The loud crash of the bottle, combined with the lure of the blood water, finally drew the nearby zombies. About a dozen zombies crowded out of the convenience store across the street. Not good, run, shouted Fatso. The three of us scrambled into the car, but it was too late. Before we could close the doors, a horde of zombies overwhelmed us. After a narrowly avoided disaster, the ground floor's main door was completely destroyed. Zombies occasionally wandered in, forcing Harrison and me to minimize noise and increase our vigilance. 90 days had passed since the zombie outbreak began. That day, Harrison was observing through binoculars at the window. Come inside quickly, Harrison suddenly shouted, half his body leaning out of the window. He then jumped down the ladder, ran to the platform beside it, and pulled the lever, lowering the platform. What are you doing? I shouted as I ran over. A woman holding a child had already climbed onto the platform, with zombies clinging to the edge, trying to get up as well. The woman kicked fiercely a few times, causing them to ultimately fall to the ground. The platform slowly rose, bringing the woman and child to safety. The woman, about 30 years old, held a 5 or 6-year-old boy tightly against her. The boy, with eyes wide like a deer's, looked anxiously at us. The woman put the child down and stood up, but suddenly sat down with a hiss. What's wrong? Harrison asked anxiously. It's nothing. I just twisted my ankle running too fast. It will be fine after I rub it a bit, the woman said, massaging her ankle. Seeing my uneasy expression, Harrison pulled me aside, rubbing his hands nervously. Isaac, I'm sorry for letting them in without consulting you. In these apocalyptic times, self-preservation is already challenging enough, let alone protecting others, I said worriedly. We don't know where these two came from or if they're infected. It's dangerous to let them in like this. Harrison looked sadly at me. I know, I saw this woman protecting her child from the zombies, and it reminded me of my mom. When I was a child, a vicious dog chased me, and my mom protected me just like that. But since my parents divorced when I was 6, I haven't seen her since. A tear fell from Harrison's eyes, and I didn't know how to comfort him. This outwardly cheerful and kind-hearted guy was so fragile and lonely inside. I casually put an arm around his shoulder. Well, now that they're here, let's find a way to settle them in, but we'll need to keep them isolated for a while, you know, just to be safe. Harrison wiped his tears and nodded vigorously. I approached the woman and said, hello, you can stay here temporarily, but for everyone's safety, we need you to undergo a period of isolation first. This is to ensure that you are not infected. My name is Isaac, and this is Harrison. Don't worry. We won't hurt you, the woman gratefully replied. Thank you. I know you are good people. My name is Hannah, and this is my son Tomo. After speaking, she nudged the boy. Say hello to Uncle. Hello, Uncle, the little boy timidly called out. I nodded and continued to ask, where are you from? Hannah answered, I live nearby. We've run out of food at home these past few days, so I had no choice but to take the risk and go out with my child to find something to eat. I didn't expect to be discovered by zombies before we could find any food, if I may ask. "Where is the child's father?" I inquired with curiosity. Hannah lowered her head. "I'm a single mother. The father of my child hasn't been in contact for a long time." Feeling sorry for them, I turned to Harrison and said, "Let's get them something to eat first." Harrison quickly ran to fetch 2 bottles of milk and some bread. Hannah took them, her eyes reddening as she thanked us profusely. She fed her child some milk and handed him the bread, then hungrily ate herself. Harrison and I set up a mattress and a blanket for them, and improvised a partition in the corner of the room with a cabinet and a table. "You can stay here for now. Since you've had contact with zombies, we don't know if you're infected. Try to stay inside as much as possible except for using the restroom," Harrison told Hannah. Hannah nodded and replied, "Okay, I'll listen to you," watching them enter the partition. Harrison also brought a bucket of water and a cup, then found a toy from a previously opened package and gave it to the little boy, who lit up and loudly thanked him. Harrison returned with a goofy smile, asking if we could have smoked meat and rice for dinner again. With Hannah and her son joining us, the warehouse became livelier. Although everyone spoke softly, the occasional sound of the boys' innocent laughter brightened our spirits. 2 days passed without any strange incidents from the mother and son, and Harrison and I felt relieved. After lunch, as Harrison went to wash the dishes, he encountered Hannah coming out of the restroom. In a split second, she lunged at Harrison, who instinctively blocked her with his arm, only to be bitten. The stainless steel basin clattered to the ground as I rushed over with a chair, knocking Hannah down before she could get up, then quickly positioned the chair across her shoulders to pin her down. Hannah struggled violently, her shoes coming off to reveal a black wound on her ankle. It turned out she hadn't sprained her ankle that day. She had been bitten by a zombie. "Damn it," I said, both anxious and angry, glancing at Harrison sitting dazed on the floor. "Mommy, mommy." The little boy screamed, running towards her. "Stay back," I shouted. The boy stopped, frightened, but upon seeing Hannah's condition, he cried and lunged forward. "Let go of my mommy." I grabbed the back of his shirt with my left hand to keep him away from Hannah, while my right hand and leg forcefully held down the chair, feeling increasingly overwhelmed. Suddenly, Hannah stopped struggling. Her eyes blankly stared at her son as tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry." Hannah clenched her fists, struggling to control the turmoil inside her. "Please, take care of him, please." I opened my mouth but found myself speechless. Hannah looked at her son with deep reluctance in her eyes. "Listen to Uncle, be good." Then, seizing a moment when I was distracted, she flipped the chair over, quickly climbed up a ladder by the window, and without hesitation, squeezed out through the window. I quickly covered the child's eyes as a loud bang erupted from outside, and the little boy cried out heartbreakingly, "Mommy," his words soaking my palms with tears. As he struggled to climb the ladder, anxiety gripped me. I needed to check on Harrison urgently, so I secured the boy to a chair with a rope for his safety. With a click, by the time I noticed, Harrison had already pulled the lever on the platform. He was about to jump onto the descending platform when I ran over and grabbed him by the waist. Shaking, Harrison pleaded, "Isaac, let me go while I'm still clear-headed. I want to go down and bring back some food. You keep living well for me." I threw him to the ground in frustration and growled, "If you want to live, live for yourself. I won't live on your behalf." Harrison looked up at the ceiling, his face filled with despair, sitting on the ground, breathing heavily. Those few minutes felt like a lifetime of separation and loss. I'm no saint, but after sharing countless days and nights of hardship, I had come to see Harrison as family. I couldn't just watch him walk into certain death. Once I calmed down, I checked Harrison's injuries. Fortunately, his thick clothing had protected him somewhat. Rolling up his sleeve, I found a row of deep bite marks bleeding slightly, remembering how I dealt with a snake bite back home in the mountains. I squeezed the blood from his wound and flushed it thoroughly with running water before disinfecting it with alcohol and applying a dressing. After treating him, I asked, "Do you feel unwell?" Harrison had calmed down and shook his head. "No," he said. "Isaac, tie me up, please." He glanced at the little boy on the chair and continued, "And him too, tie him up first. I can't risk anything happening to you again." I sighed and nodded, walking over to the little boy. Crouching down, I asked, "Your name is Tomo, right?" I stroked his hair. "Your mom is gone. Uncle has to take care of you now, but first, I need to tie you up for a few days, just to make sure you don't have the virus, then I'll let you go. Don't be scared, okay?" Tears welled up in his eyes, but he nodded. I untied the rope from the chair and securely tied it around Tomo's waist, then led him to the compartment where they had been staying, leaving a 2-meter length of rope for him to move around freely. After securing the other end of the rope to a table and checking that Tomo had no injuries, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. After comforting Tomo, I used the same method to tie Harrison to a pillar in the center of the warehouse. Harrison gathered a pile of cardboard boxes for a makeshift bed and grabbed a blanket. That night, none of us had the appetite to eat. Tomo nibbled on some snacks and cried himself to sleep. A week later, with no signs of infection in Tomo, We ruled out the possibility of him being infected. Harrison's wound hadn't turned black but was a worrying dark red and showed no signs of improvement. Apart from that, his movements had stiffened, though his appetite was normal. Adopting a day-by-day mindset, Harrison became surprisingly optimistic, returning to his carefree self. To pass the time, I found some books for him and kept Tomo busy with unpacking deliveries and playing games. A month flew by, and the temperature gradually began to rise, signaling the approach of spring. Since his mother's departure, Tomo had stopped speaking. I tried to spend as much time with him as possible, and he grew more dependent on me. Apart from his stiff movements, Harrison's speech had also significantly deteriorated. He could only say a few simple words. Still, his mind remained clear, either pacing around the pillar or lying on the bed, lost in thought. I asked him if he ever felt the urge to bite someone. He tugged at the corner of his mouth and said, "No, not really," that morning. Just after breakfast, a broadcast echoed from outside the window. "The nation has developed a drug that deactivates the zombie virus. Starting tomorrow, we will be dispersing the drug to clean up the area. All survivors are advised to stay indoors, keep your doors and windows shut, and wait for further instructions. If you need supplies, please signal us by waving from your window today." In a flurry, I scrambled up to the window. Drones equipped with loudspeakers flew by, and the survivors who had made it this far all cheered and waved from their windows. It felt good knowing that the apocalypse was about to end. A week later, the broadcast informed us again, "The zombies in public areas have been cleared. We will now begin house-to-house inspections. All survivors, please come downstairs to register as soon as possible." On the 137th day since the zombie outbreak, I finally walked the long-missed streets again. Soldiers, armed and vigilant, stood along every road, looking at their resolute backs. I bowed deeply in gratitude. Harrison's case was a bit special, and I reported it to the government, hoping he could receive treatment. The next morning, a helicopter landed at our doorstep. 2 doctors descended and conducted a brief examination on Harrison. One of the older doctors promised to do everything possible to treat him and said they needed to take him away immediately. I went over to Harrison, held his hand, and said, "Cooperate well with the doctors. I believe you will get better." Harrison nodded with tears in his eyes. After sending Harrison off, I loaded the remaining parcels and supplies into the car and drove with Tomo to my hometown. I drove fast, barely containing my excitement. As we reached the entrance of the village, I saw a familiar figure sitting on a stone, looking out towards the road. I had barely stepped out of the car when I was embraced by strong arms. Choking up, I called out, "Dad," and heard his sobbing voice. I've finally waited for my son to come back. Finally, the reunion after surviving the apocalypse was overwhelmingly emotional. I had never felt such happiness and preciousness being near my parents. They were moved to tears when they heard about Tomo's ordeal and treated him with great care, as if he were their own grandson. A month later, with utilities and social order gradually restored, I planned to return to the courier station to complete the unfinished deliveries and hand over the parcels or compensations to surviving customers. When it was time to leave, Tomo clung tightly to my legs, refusing to let go. Even though I assured him repeatedly that I would come back to fetch him as soon as I settled everything, I crouched down, wiped the tears from his face, and said, "Uncle will finish delivering these parcels and then come back for Tomo. Trust me." "Okay, Uncle, can I call you Dad?" Tomo asked, speaking up for the first time in many days. "Yes, my good son." I embraced Tomo tightly and secretly wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes. Saying goodbye to my parents and Tomo, I returned to the familiar courier station. After fixing the main door and rearranging the first floor, I took out the preserved delivery slips and began calling each customer. After a busy day, during a meal break, I habitually turned on my phone. The Health Commission announced yesterday that a vaccine for the zombie virus has been successfully developed. The vaccine, originally derived from a survivor who was infected with a small amount of the zombie virus but retained most of their human consciousness, has passed clinical trials. "Isaac," a familiar voice called out. I looked up sharply, my eyes welling up with tears.